Hi guys, and welcome to History That Makes You Sleepy. Tonight we're stepping into the pale blue hour before sunrise, when the American frontier is still half dream and half mud. You are beside a covered wagon, its canvas breathing softly in the chill, its wheels crusted with yesterday's dust, its wooden ribs holding everything a family owns. Somewhere inside, a baby stirs under a faded quilt, making that tiny uncertain sound that says breakfast is now history's problem. And yes, tiny reality check. You probably won't survive this if you expect clean sheets, hot coffee, and a bathroom with plumbing. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're watching from, and what your local time is. Because someone out there is drifting off at midnight while someone else is pretending this is a calm morning podcast. Now, dim the lights and let the road come closer. You stand in the hush before the wagon train fully wakes. The grass is cold against your ankles. The oxen breathe in slow clouds. A mother is already awake. Because mothers on the trail do not wait for daylight to become necessary. She sits just inside the wagon opening, shawl around her shoulders, one hand steadying the baby against her chest, the other searching for a cloth, a pin, a cup, anything that did not roll under a flour sack during the night. The wagon smells of canvas, wood smoke, old wool, cornmeal, leather, sour milk, and damp ashes. It is not a nursery with painted walls and a cradle beneath a window. It is a moving cupboard, bedroom, pantry, laundry basket, medicine chest, and sometimes henhouse, all squeezed into a wooden box. The baby's world is a folded blanket, a mother's lap, and the dim canvas ceiling overhead, glowing softly as dawn seeps through. In the middle decades of the 19th century, many emigrant families crossed routes such as the Oregon, California, and Mormon trails in wagons pulled by oxen or mules. One plain historical fact is that most people did not ride comfortably all day inside the wagon. They walked. The wagon carried supplies first, people second, and comfort somewhere far behind, probably lost near Missouri. So picture this mother not as a passenger in a cozy rolling room, but as someone who may walk for miles, then climb in to nurse, soothe, clean, and rearrange the small kingdom of baby care. The baby wakes again, louder now. You hear the wet little breath, the soft complaint, the rustle of cloth. The mother lowers her face and murmurs something too quiet for anyone but the child. Maybe it is a hymn line. Maybe it is nonsense. Outside, a man coughs. A child kicks at a blanket. Someone stirs last night's coals. The camp begins to click and mutter into being. Space is precious. Every movement must account for the iron pot, the sack of beans, the family Bible wrapped in cloth, the tin cup hanging from a nail, and the little bundle of baby clothes tucked high, where mice cannot easily reach. The baby is swaddled, not always in the decorative sense, but in the practical sense of please stay warm, please stay still, please do not roll into the coffee grinder. A quirky tidbit floats through the morning like a moth near the lantern. Some emigrant mothers cushioned babies with whatever soft packing material they had, so a child might sleep near spare clothing, seed sacks, or even bags of dried apples. Frontier childcare can be tender and absurd at once. Your infant may be wrapped beside the Sunday dress, the bacon, and a cracked blue teacup that somehow matters enough to cross a continent. The mother reaches for a small tin cup. Water is never just water out here. It is hope, risk, and logistics in one cloudy swallow, if it looks clear. That does not mean it is safe. Germ theory is not yet ordinary household knowledge for many travellers, and sickness moves through camps with the quiet confidence of something nobody can see. Still, the baby needs cleaning, the mother needs drinking. Breakfast needs boiling, and the trail does not care that microbes have not introduced themselves properly. Historians still argue whether pioneer women experienced the overland journey mainly as familiar domestic labour in a new setting, or as a deep disruption that changed family roles as you watch this mother before sunrise. Both answers seem to breathe in the same cold air. She's doing old work feeding, wiping, warming, calming. But she's doing it with no walls, no settled neighbours, no steady water, no nearby doctor, and no promise that tonight's camp will resemble this one. Domestic life has not disappeared. It has been hitched to oxen and dragged west at 2 miles an hour. First light strengthens. The inside of the wagon turns from grey to pearl. You see the baby's face now, round and serious, cheeks flushed from sleep, hair damp at the temples. The mother changes a cloth with practiced speed. Pins are precious and slightly dangerous, which is a beautiful summary of frontier technology. A dropped pin can vanish into bedding. A bent one can scratch. There are no disposable anything. There's only wash it, dry it, fold it, use it again, and try not to think too hard about the dust. The baby does not know America is expanding, or that newspapers are pouring grand meanings into this road. The baby knows warmth, milk, cloth, rhythm, inside the wagon. History is measured in feedings, naps, and the astonishing fact that a mother can make a little pocket of safety while standing on a continent that keeps refusing to be gentle. The camp tightens into motion. Bedding is rolled. The fire is beaten down. Pots are scraped. Yokes are lifted with grunts and low words. The baby is shifted from one shoulder to the other, tucked closer against the morning chill. The mother checks the wagon interior one more time, because a day's comfort can hinge on whether the clean cloths are reachable or buried under flour. The line begins to move, wheels complain, chains clink, oxen snort. The trail opens ahead in pale strips, pressed flat by those who came before. You walk beside the mother as she steps into the day, the baby quiet now, cheek against her shoulder. The rhythm settles in foot, wheel, breath, creak. It is almost soothing, if you ignore the blisters and the fact that every peaceful moment is basically a loan from the future. By full sunrise, the canvas wagon no longer looks like a bedroom. It is a pale moving shape among many pale moving shapes, crossing grass that shines for a few minutes before the heat lifts. But you know what is inside it now. A nursery has been made there, temporary and imperfect, assembled each morning and undone each night. The baby dozes again, rocked by wheels, wrapped in smoke and wool and mother. While the road lengthens toward the next small need, the wagon rolls on, and the small nursery you noticed at dawn begins to reveal itself in pieces, not as a room, but as a series of hiding places. You learn to look upward, sideways, beneath, behind. Every inch has been argued over in silence. A mother may not own much that belongs only to the baby, because the wagon is already crowded with flour barrels, bacon, tools, spare axles, bedding, cooking pots, seed, clothing, rope, and the emotional burden of bringing one breakable teacup, because surely civilization requires at least one foolish object. You walk beside the wagon and imagine how she packed it, not casually, not with the modern confidence of a suitcase that can be overweight for a fee. The covered wagon most people picture is often called a prairie schooner, and one mainstream fact is that these wagons usually carried many hundreds of pounds of supplies, sometimes well over 1,000, depending on the family. The route, and the animals pulling it, that weight mattered, too much, and the oxen suffered, too little, and the family might suffer first. So the baby's needs compete with flour, bullets, nails, pans, blankets, coffee, and the mysterious quantity of dried beans that every serious journey seems to require. A tiny shirt is light, a cradle is not, a small quilt is useful, a rocking chair is a fantasy with legs. A wooden cradle may be left behind before departure, or never considered at all, instead. The mother creates substitutes from what can fold, tie, hang, or wedge safely between other objects. Inside the wagon, you see a folded blanket set near the front, softened by repeated use. It may become a bed during the day. At night it becomes one layer among many, tucked close to the mother so she can hear every change in the baby's breathing. A shawl becomes shade, a skirt becomes a privacy curtain, a flour sack becomes a towel, a clean rag becomes a diaper, a washcloth, a bandage, or, in desperate moments, proof that resourcefulness is just anxiety wearing an apron. Some families bring a cradle board, especially where they have learned or borrowed the practice from native communities or from older regional customs. Others use baskets, boxes, or slings. You notice how every choice must answer a simple question. Can this item keep the baby safe while the wagon jerks, sways, jolts, and lurches like a wooden animal with a grudge? The trail is not smooth. Ruts catch wheels, stones strike, mud sucks at the tires. A baby laid carelessly on bedding could slide or bump, so a mother nests the child in cloth, places bundles around the edges, and checks again, and then checks once more because worry is free and takes up no wagon space. A quirky little tidbit sits among the blankets some travellers used hanging arrangements, like a cloth sling or hammock tied inside the wagon frame, so the motion of the wagon could rock the baby instead of tossing the baby directly with every rut. It sounds clever, almost cosy, until you remember that the same wagon may also be carrying a skillet, a saw, and a sack of hard bread. The frontier does not offer a safety rating, it offers rope and hope. The baby clothes are small, but the problem of keeping them clean is enormous. Shirts, caps, gowns, wraps, socks, and spare cloths must be stored where dust, grease, mice, damp, and wandering hands will do the least damage. A mother may bundle them in a chest if the family can spare one. More often, she ties them in cloth and tucks them among bedding. There is likely no adorable drawer labelled baby things. There's only a knot she knows how to untie in the dark. You can almost feel her mental inventory as the wagon creaks forward. Clean cloths near the front, medicines wrapped and hidden away from little fingers, pins in a pouch, a spoon tied with string, a cup nested in a pot, soap wrapped carefully. Because soap is not just soap. It is dignity in a small pale brick, a little comb, maybe a tiny pair of shoes, though babies who cannot walk do not strictly need them. And still mothers have always been tempted by small shoes because humanity is weak before cuteness. Historians continue to debate whether emigrant women packed primarily according to printed guidebooks, community advice, or inherited household habit. You can feel that debate in the wagon's clutter. A guidebook might suggest pounds of flour and bacon. A neighbour might insist on extra saleratus for baking. A grandmother might say, "Bring more baby cloth than you think possible." And she would probably be right. On the trail, theory meets spilled milk, and theory usually loses. The medicine bundle carries its own uneasy atmosphere. Families bring laudanum, paregoric, castor oil, peppermint, camphor, mustard, herbs, and other remedies depending on region, class, and belief. Some are useful in limited ways, some are dangerous, some are mostly confidence in a bottle. A tired mother with a crying infant may hold that little vial and wonder whether relief is worth the risk, especially when medical advice arrives second-hand and certainty is scarcer than shade. The wagon itself becomes a map of care. Heavy things ride low, fragile things ride wrapped. Baby things must stay reachable. That is the trick. Reachable. Not merely packed. Not preserved for the future. Not buried beneath the iron stove pieces that somebody thought essential. When the child cries, the mother cannot unpack the entire westward migration to find one clean cloth. She needs the nursery to function while in motion. You hear the lid of a chest thump shut. You hear a tin cup rattle. You smell dried apples, dust. and the faint sweetness of molasses from a cork that does not quite seal, the baby sleeps, for now. In a nest of fabric near the wagon's shadowed front, the mother walks beside the wheel, one hand resting occasionally on the sideboard, as though the wagon is not only cargo but a body she's keeping alive, and perhaps that is what it is. A wooden body filled with hunger, memory, tools, fear, and baby breath. A house reduced to what can survive jolting over plains. A nursery without walls, arranged by touch and repetition. Each packed object tells you what the family thinks the future will demand. The axe says wood, the flour says bread, the kettle says water and soup. The baby blanket says, please let this child grow. As the sun climbs, the wagon canvas warms, and dust begins to settle on everything with the gentle persistence of an unwanted relative. The mother reaches inside, finds the right bundle without looking, and pulls out a soft cloth. She does not smile exactly, but her shoulders loosen. The thing she needs is where she placed it. For one quiet moment, order wins, the road continues, indifferent but patient, while the little nursery on wheels rocks onward into the brightening day. The cloth comes free from its bundle, and with it comes the next quiet truth of the road. A baby does not care that the wagon train has a schedule. The oxen may be yoked, the men may be calling, the lead wagon may already be easing toward the pale line of trail, but hunger has its own command. It arrives in a thin cry, a rooting mouth, a little fist opening and closing against a mother's sleeve as if trying to knead milk from the morning itself. You walk close enough to hear her murmur. She shifts the baby under her shawl, turns slightly away from the wind, and makes a small shelter of her body. There may be other people nearby. Of course, there are always other people nearby. Privacy on the trail is mostly an idea people remember fondly from back east, like feather beds or doors that latch. A woman learns to nurse with her back to the road, with a shawl draped just so, with the calm expression of someone who has decided that survival outranks embarrassment. One plain historical fact is that breastfeeding was usually the simplest and safest way to feed an infant during overland travel, because it required no pot, no cow standing politely nearby, and no clean bottle. That does not mean it was easy. Milk supply could falter when a mother was exhausted, underfed, dehydrated, frightened, or ill. The body's practical, yes, but it's not a magic flour mill. It asks for rest and water, and the trail is famously rude about both. The baby latches. The cry breaks off into soft, damp swallowing. The wagon wheel beside you gives a long, wooden groan as if it too has opinions. Dust rises around your skirt hem. Somewhere ahead, a driver clicks his tongue at the oxen. The whole train slows without anyone saying why. Everyone knows. A baby is eating. History can wait 3 minutes, or pretend to. Water matters more than almost anything now. The mother's throat is dry. Her lips taste of dust and smoke. She drinks when she can, but every drink is a calculation. Is the water from a spring, a creek, a muddy river, a barrel that has sat too long in the sun? You may see it glitter and think purity, but the trail has a dark sense of humour. Clear water can carry illness. Stagnant water smells like warning. Brackish water makes tea taste like regret. Still, the mother drinks, because milk depends on it, and because thirst makes the body feel hollow. For babies old enough to take more than milk, the problem becomes thornier. A little mush of cornmeal or flour may be thinned with water. Bread can be softened. Beans can be mashed. Milk, when available, might come from a cow travelling with the train, though keeping a cow healthy on the move is its own slow drama. If the animal wanders, sickens, dries up, or is traded away, the baby's diet changes with it. Imagine depending on a creature that may decide to step into a ravine because grass looked interesting. Very frontier, very inconvenient. A quirky tidbit, soft and strange, is that some families use little feeding devices called pap boats, small spouted vessels meant to deliver thin gruel or milk mixtures to infants. In settled homes they could look almost elegant, made of pewter, ceramic, or glass, on the trail. Elegance gives way to whatever survives a bump, a spoon, a cup edge, a rag dipped in liquid, or a makeshift feeder might take the place of proper equipment. If you're picturing a spotless baby bottle with measurements on the side, gently let that image ride off into the sunset. Feeding can happen in motion, but not gracefully. The mother climbs into the wagon when the jolting becomes too much or when the baby will not settle. Inside, it is warmer, dimmer, and full of shifting shadows. The canvas filters the sunlight until everything looks like it is underwater. She braces her back against a chest, draws her knees up, and holds the baby tight while the wagon lurches over ruts. Milk dribbles, the baby coughs, a spoon clatters away and disappears beneath bedding, where all useful things go to start new lives. Scholars still dispute how often infants on the western trails were weaned earlier than they might have been at home, pushed by exhaustion, pregnancy, illness, or the lack of privacy and time. The diaries do not always say. Women wrote of weather, distance, deaths, births, river crossings, broken wagons, and flour running low. They did not always record every feeding, every cracked nipple, every midnight worry that the baby was not getting enough. The silence itself becomes part of the evidence, thin as a shawl and just as difficult to read. You notice how feeding is never only feeding. It is comfort. It is quiet. It is the nearest thing to home the baby has, at the breast or in the crook of the arm. The child feels rhythm, warmth, and the familiar scent of skin beneath wood smoke. Around you, the world may be huge, windy, and unsympathetic. But the baby's universe narrows to the pulse under one cheek. The mother watches the child's face closely. Is the mouth wet? Are the eyes bright? Does the skin feel hot? Is the crying hungry or tired or something worse? She has no pediatric chart, no clinic appointment, no reassuring search result glowing at midnight. She has touch, memory, advice from other women, and the terrifying education of each day. Babies are small, but their needs fill every mile. At midday, when the train stops near a creek, feeding blends with water work, kettles are filled, cloths are rinsed, a pot is set to boil if fuel can be spared. The mother may prepare a little softened food for an older baby, blowing on it, testing it with her lips, trying to keep grit out of the mixture. Dust floats down anyway, because dust on the frontier is practically a food group. The child opens a sticky mouth, receives a spoonful, rejects half of it, and looks deeply betrayed by texture. The mother wipes the chin with the corner of a cloth already used for something else. Though you're too polite to ask what, she smiles faintly. Perhaps the baby smiles back. Perhaps not. Babies are honest critics. They have no respect for rationing, schedules, or cornmeal prepared with love still. Another spoonful goes in, another little swallow, another ordinary victory no monument will ever remember. You walk beside her as the wagon shadows stretch. You can smell the last creek water sloshing in barrels, the sourness of damp cloth, the faint sweetness of a milk breath against a shoulder. Feeding has tied the mother to every element of the journey water. Fire, animals, grain, privacy, illness, time. The trail may be drawn on maps as a line, but for her it is counted in swallows. One more nursing, one more cup boiled, one more soft mouth fed before the next uncertain camp appears beyond the grass. The last spoonful disappears, or mostly disappears, into the baby, and what does not go in becomes part of the baby's cheek, sleeve, blanket, and perhaps the mother's shoulder. This is how the trail keeps score. Nothing remains clean for long. Milk dries, cornmeal sticks, dust lands softly on damp cloth and becomes paste. You begin to understand that raising a baby in a wagon is not only a matter of feeding and soothing, it is a daily negotiation with dirt. The mother shifts the child against her hip and reaches for the cloth bundle again. Inside are squares and strips of linen, cotton, flannel, or whatever worn fabric can be spared. These are diapers, though the word may not always carry the same cheerful nursery meaning you know. They are practical rags, washed and reused until they thin, fray, and become useful for some other small task. On the road, no cloth retires with dignity, it is promoted downward. A solid piece of history sits plainly in this dusty morning. Families on overland trails depended on reusable cloth for infant care, and washing it required water, fuel, time, and enough sunlight or wind to dry it. Every one of those could be scarce. A stream might be miles away. Firewood might be limited on open prairie. A rainy day could turn the wagon into a damp closet. And if the train is behind schedule, nobody wants to stop because one baby has launched a domestic emergency. The baby, naturally, has not consulted the timetable. The change happens quickly. The mother lays the child on a folded blanket inside the wagon or across her lap if the ground is too muddy. She works with practiced hands, pinning, folding, wiping, bundling the soiled cloth apart from the cleaner ones. The smell is immediate and human, made sharper by heat, canvas, and confinement. It is not grand history, which is exactly why it matters. Empires expand in books, but babies still need changing. You hear wagon wheels creak nearby, the stamp of oxen, the slap of wet laundry against a stone at the creek. Women gather where water is available, but there is no leisure in it. They kneel or bend, skirts damp at the hem, sleeves rolled, hands reddened by cold water. Soap is guarded carefully, ash lye, homemade soap. Or store-bought soap might be used depending on what the family brought and what remains. Cloth is rubbed, rinsed, wrung, slapped, twisted, and hung over wagon bows, shrubs, ropes, ox yokes, or whatever will hold still. An odd little trail detail worth tucking under your pillow is that diapers and baby cloth sometimes flutter from wagons as they moved, tied where sun and wind could do the drying. Imagine the solemn procession westward, oxen plodding, mountains in the far distance, destiny calling, and somewhere from a wagon bow, a damp diaper waving like a very humble flag of civilization. Not all banners are heroic. Some simply say, the child has survived breakfast. Dust complicates everything. It sifts into seams, blankets, hair, food, and the folds of tiny clothing. It settles on wet cloth before the cloth is dry. It coats the mother's hands just after she washes them. It clings to the baby's neck and wrists, those soft little creases where grime gathers as if invited. A mother wipes the baby's face, then wipes again. The child blinks up at her, offended by care, and immediately rubs a fist into one eye. You may notice how often washing is incomplete, not careless, incomplete. There is a difference. A full bath for a baby might happen at a good camp near sufficient water, with a kettle warmed over coals and a basin set in a sheltered place. More often, cleaning is done by parts face, hands, bottom, neck, behind the ears when possible. The mother cannot always spare enough warm water to bathe the whole child. She cannot always undress the baby fully in wind or cold. She cannot always dry everything before the train moves. Researchers have long disagreed about how much trail diaries understate the physical filth of migration, especially women's labour around bodies, laundry, and illness. Many journals were written for family reading, memory, or moral reflection. A woman might note that the day was dusty, but not write 3 sentences about diapers drying beside bacon grease. Respectability had its own editing hand. Yet the cloth had to be washed, the baby had to be cleaned. The daily evidence rode on every wagon line. The mother works within a rhythm. Change, rinse if water is near, store if water is not, dry when weather allows, fold when dry enough, use again. She may keep soiled cloths in a bucket, a bag, or tied bundle, placed where the smell will not conquer the wagon entirely. That is the goal, not perfection, only preventing surrender. The wagon is already full of odours, leather, sweat, damp wool, animals, smoke, old food, axle grease. Baby laundry adds its own verse to the song. At a creek, you kneel beside her in imagination and watch the water cloud around the cloth. The current carries away what it can. Downstream, another family may be filling a kettle, which is a detail best considered gently and then released into the night. People did not always understand contamination in the way modern listeners do. They did understand foul smells, bad taste, visible muck, and the danger of stagnant pools. They made choices with the knowledge they had, and sometimes with no good choice at all. The baby lies nearby on a blanket in the wagon shade, kicking both feet as if personally pleased with the chaos. A sibling is told to watch the little one, and immediately becomes distracted by a beetle. Because history also contains children being children. The mother glances over often. Laundry pulls her hands downward. The baby pulls her eyes back. This double attention is exhausting. Nothing is done without listening. Wind lifts the wet cloths. They snap softly on a line strung between wagon and bush. The sound is almost peaceful. The mother's hands smell of soap and creek mud. Her back aches from bending. Her cuffs are damp, still. There is satisfaction in seeing clean squares brighten in the sun. Clean cloth is safety. Clean cloth is comfort. Clean cloth is one more defence against rash, chill, smell, and the slow erosion of morale. By afternoon, the train moves again. Some cloths are dry, some are not. Dampness is folded where it must be, because the road makes rude demands. Dust rises behind the wheels and lays itself across everything newly washed. A quiet joke told by the prairie with no mercy at all. The mother sees it happen. She may sigh, she may laugh once, softly, because what else is there, the baby, freshly changed and briefly content, sleeps against her, smelling faintly of milk, sun-warmed cloth, and the creek they have already left behind. The baby sleeps for a while with that brave, temporary confidence babies have, as if the world has agreed to remain reasonable. It has not. Of course. The wagon train is a living instrument now, tuned by wood, leather, iron, animal breath, human muttering, and the long complaint of wheels. Every sound travels through the baby's small body, every jolt speaks in the bones, every chain clink says, "Good morning again." Tiny traveller, did you think peace was included? You walk beside the wagon and begin to hear the day the way the baby hears it. Not as a story, not as migration, as rhythm. The oxen's hooves fall with a dull, patient thud. Harness rings tap and chime. Wooden wheels grind through dust, then bump over hidden stones. A driver calls in a low voice, somewhere behind you. A child laughs too loudly, is hushed. Laughs again because children are loyal to noise. A pot inside a wagon knocks against another pot with a hollow metal note. For a mother, sound is both problem and tool. The noise can wake the baby, frighten the baby, or swallow the first warning of a cry. Yet the steady motion can also lull. Many infants, then as now, are soothed by repeated movement, and a wagon gives repetition generously, if not gently. A plain piece of historical truth is that emigrant wagons often moved at a walking pace, with families covering around 10 to 15 miles on a good day, depending on terrain, weather, animals, and road conditions. That slow pace made the journey long, but it also gave mothers a rhythm to work with. Step, creak, sway. Step, creak, sway. It is not a lullaby written on paper. It is a lullaby built of axle grease. The mother learns the sounds that matter. A hungry cry cuts differently from a startled one. A wet diaper cry is brief at first, then indignant. A tired cry becomes wild because sleep, for babies, can be an enemy they are determined to defeat. She hears the little inhale before the full wail. She can tell when the wagon jolt has bumped the baby awake, when sunlight in the eyes has offended the entire person, when a sibling has poked too close in the name of affection. She sings, softly at first, because voices carry, a hymn perhaps, or a ballad remembered from childhood, or a cradle song passed from mother to mother until nobody knows where it began. The tune may be English, Scottish, Irish, German, Scandinavian, African American, or shaped by any number of family histories carried west. The frontier was never one voice, no matter how often later stories tried to flatten it. The mother's song is private, but it belongs to a much older chorus. Here is a peculiar little detail. Gentle enough to keep by the fire, some parents on the trail use the wagon's own creaking as a kind of sleep aid, timing their rocking, patting, or singing to the sound of the wheels. You can imagine it, can't you? The mother patting the baby's back in the pause between groans, letting the axle keep time like a grumpy wooden metronome. Not elegant, very effective, at least until the wheel hits a rut and history drops the beat. The baby fusses as the sun rises higher, heat gathers under the canvas, and the wagon turns close and dusty. The mother reaches in, lifts the child, and brings the baby against her shoulder. The little face screws up, the mouth opens, a cry begins, sharp enough to make a nearby ox flick its ear. The mother pats. The cry continues, she hums, the cry rises, she sways while walking, which looks simple until you remember she's doing it on uneven ground beside a loaded wagon, with a shawl slipping and dust in her eyes. Modern fitness instructors could never. Other women here, they do not always interfere. There is etiquette and hardship. One may glance over and smile, another may offer a songline. Someone may say the baby is only fighting sleep, as if the baby is a tiny drunk uncle refusing to go inside after a wedding. Advice floats along the line, useful or not. Rub the back, cover the eyes, loosen the wrap, tighten the wrap, give water. Do not give water. Let the child cry. Never let the child cry. The mother receives these opinions with the weary diplomacy of a queen managing a cabinet of aunties. Academic voices still differ on how much communal childcare actually eased mothers' burdens during overland migration, because diaries show both cooperation and isolation. Women borrowed, helped, watched, and advised. But each mother still carried the final vigilance. When the baby cried at night, it was her sleep most immediately broken. When the wagon jolted, it was her arm that tightened. Community mattered, so did loneliness. Thunder comes in the afternoon, first as a mutter beyond the grass. The oxen shift uneasily. Men look west. The air smells metallic and damp. The baby feels the change before understanding it, and the cry returns, thin and startled. The mother covers one little ear with her palm and turns the child inward. Rain begins with fat drops on canvas, then becomes a roar inside the wagon. The sound is enormous. The baby wails into it. The mother's song disappears under the drumbeat, so she changes tactics. She presses cheek to cheek, letting the child feel her voice through bone more than hear it through air. She hums low in her chest. The sound vibrates. The baby hiccups, sobs, listens. Outside, rain beats the canvas roof. Wheels suck through mud, men shout, animals snort, and the whole world seems made of wet noise inside the circle of her arms. The baby's breathing begins to shorten, then slow. This is one of the secrets of trail motherhood. Soothing is not always quiet. Sometimes it is creating one steadier sound inside a storm of larger ones. A song under thunder, a hum beneath wheels, a whispered phrase repeated until it becomes a path the baby can follow into sleep. By evening, the rain has passed. The wagon train stops on ground that is not exactly dry, but is at least less ambitious about becoming a swamp. Fires struggle. Smoke hangs low. The baby, exhausted by crying and being alive, sleeps hard against the mother's lap, around camp. The sounds change again. Axes knock softly. A kettle lid ticks. Someone sings while rubbing down an animal. A tired child is scolded in a voice too sleepy to contain real anger. The mother sits near the wagon opening and rocks without a chair. Her body remembers the motion even when the wheels have stopped. Forward, back, forward, back. The baby breathes in little warm puffs. You hear a night insect begin its thin music in the grass. The road has been loud all day, but now its noise settles into memory. And the mother keeps the smallest rhythm going, just enough to carry the child across the dark. The rocking continues after the wheels have stopped, because the mother's body has become part cradle, part clock, part weather instrument. She can feel the night cooling through her shawl. She can smell wet canvas, bruised grass, smoke, and the heavy animal warmth of oxen standing near the wagons. The baby sleeps for now, but every mother on the trail knows that weather is not scenery. Weather is another passenger, and it never paid for its place. Morning arrives with a pale chill. Dew beads along the wagon canvas and drips from the ropes. The baby's blanket feels damp at the edges, not soaked, but enough to make the mother frown. She presses 2 fingers to the child's neck, then to the tiny hands. Warm enough for the moment. The sky is clear, though that means little out here. The day can begin as a hymn and end as a bucket thrown in your face. A dependable piece of trail history rests in this changing air. Emigrant families crossing the plains and mountains faced wide swings in temperature, from hot prairie afternoons to cold nights and mountain frosts. Even in travelling seasons chosen to avoid winter, mothers had to adjust constantly. Too many layers and the baby sweats, then chills. Too few and the wind sneaks into every fold. A baby cannot say, "Excuse me, I believe my left foot is freezing." The baby can only fuss, redden, shiver, or cry until someone solves the mystery. So the mother learns the baby's climate by touch. She checks the back of the neck more than the hands. She feels the chest beneath the wrap. She watches the colour of the lips, the dampness of hair, the way the child curls or kicks. A cap goes on, then comes off. A shawl becomes shade, then warmth, then a nursing screen, then a blanket spread over the wagon side to block wind. Clothing is not simply clothing, it's a set of movable walls. By mid-morning, the sun turns bold. The wagon canvas brightens until the inside glows. Heat gathers beneath it, slow at first, then thick. The air smells of warm wood, dust, old wool, and flour sacks. The baby grows restless. A small flush rises in the cheeks. The mother lifts the child from the wagon nest and carries the baby outside where the breeze can reach them. Shade is precious, and the wagon's shadow becomes a narrow strip of mercy sliding over the ground. She may hang a cloth from the wagon bow, angle a bonnet brim, or tuck the baby against her own body so the child's face stays out of direct sun. Bonnets, caps, shawls, and loose wraps matter. Sunburn is not just discomfort. Heat can drain an infant quickly. The prairie offers light without mercy. And a mother quickly discovers that the line between cozy and dangerous can be as thin as one extra blanket. Here is a curious detail from the everyday world of old remedies some families believed in using grease, soot mixtures, or other household substances to protect skin from wind and sun. Though practices varied widely by region and family habit, it was not modern sunscreen, obviously. No cheerful bottle with a coconut smell, more like a mother looking at a blazing sky, looking at a baby's tender face, and thinking, well, perhaps bacon grease is not the worst idea anyone has had today, and honestly, on this trail, It may not even make the top 10. The wind rises in the afternoon, dust lifts from the wheels and moves in veils. It gets into the baby's lashes and gathers at the corners of the mouth. The mother turns the child inward, covering the face lightly, leaving room to breathe. Dust storms can make the world shrink to the length of an arm. Wagons ahead become pale ghosts. Voices flatten. The sun turns dim and coppery. You taste grit on your tongue. The baby coughs once, then cries, startled by the roughness in the air. The mother presses the child close. Using her own shoulder as a shield, she cannot stop the dust. She can only reduce the amount that reaches this one small face. This is frontier motherhood in miniature, not mastery. Only mitigation, not safety. Only the best available arrangement between danger and a baby's skin. Experts continue to question how fully emigrant writings capture the physical strain of weather on infants. Since many accounts record storms and heat as travel obstacles rather than as childcare crises, a diary might say, very warm today, or terrible wind, and then move on to miles covered. But inside that short phrase lives a mother checking for heat rash, wiping dust from eyelids, drying damp blankets, and wondering whether the baby will sleep in the cold that follows sunset. Rain brings a different labour. Canvas can leak. Bedding must be shifted away from drips. Clothing must be kept dry if possible, which is a phrase that loses confidence in heavy weather. The mother tucks the baby inside the wagon, but the air grows close and sour. Wet wool smells like patience being tested. The baby protests the confinement. Outside, mud thickens around the wheels. Men shout over the rain. Someone slips and curses softly enough to remain polite by 19th century standards. Lightning flashes. The baby startles with arms flung wide. That ancient infant gesture as if falling through space. The mother gathers the child quickly. Thunder rolls across the open land, and the wagon canvas trembles. She hums low, as she did before, letting the sound travel through her chest. The storm is too large to explain, so she offers the baby the one weather system she can control. Warmth, rhythm, breath. Then come the cold nights. After a hot day, the drop can feel almost personal. The mother layers blankets carefully, too loose, and the baby wriggles free, too tight, and the child sweats. She may warm a cloth near the fire, not too close, because sparks have opinions. She may sleep curled around the baby, sharing body heat. Around the camp, people complain, laugh, cough, and settle. The stars appear hard and bright, indifferent little pinpricks above the canvas line. In mountain country, frost can silver the grass by dawn. The baby's breath warms the blanket edge. The mother wakes often, listening. Is the child breathing easily? Is the wrap still in place? Has the night air found a gap? Sleep comes to her in torn pieces. A few minutes here, a little drifting there. Her mind stays tethered to the baby, even when dreams tug at her. Weather shapes the entire day's care. It decides when cloth dries, when feeding is comfortable, when a baby can be carried outside, when everyone must crowd under canvas, when laundry turns sour, when milk keeps or spoils, when a mother can rest, and when she must remain alert through the long black hours. The trail may be measured by rivers and landmarks, but for the baby it is measured by warmth and coolness, dry cloth and damp cloth, shade and glare. By the next evening, the storm has passed and the air turns clear again. The mother sits beside the wagon with the baby wrapped in a blanket that smells faintly of smoke and sun. The child blinks at the firelight, calm for once, hands opening and closing like tiny pale flowers. Above you, the stars settle into place. The mother tilts her face to the cooling sky, already thinking of tomorrow's heat, tomorrow's wind, tomorrow's need to protect this small breathing body from a world too large to hold still. The mother looks at tomorrow's sky, but her hand rests low across her body, not on the baby in her lap this time, but on another child still hidden beneath her dress. The road has a way of making every future event feel both distant and alarmingly near. A birth might be months away when the family leaves Missouri, Iowa, Illinois, or another jumping-off place, and then suddenly it is not months away at all. It is somewhere beyond the next ridge, perhaps before the next river, perhaps tonight. Because babies have never been famous for respecting travel plans. You keep walking beside her, and the rhythm changes. The older baby, the one already facing dust and diapers and the rude opinions of weather, now rides against a hip or sleeps inside the wagon. But the mother moves more carefully. She notices stones underfoot. She counts the miles with her back. The wagon jolt seems sharper. The heat feels heavier. Every camp becomes a question. Is this where it will happen? Is there water? Is there privacy? Is there another woman nearby who knows what to do when the time comes? A grounded fact from the overland story is simple and unsettling. Women did give birth along the western trails, sometimes in wagons, tents, cabins near the route, or makeshift shelters, with assistance from other women when they were available. Doctors were rare on the trail, and even when a physician happened to be travelling nearby, childbirth usually remained women's work. Mothers, sisters, neighbours, and older female emigrants became midwives by experience, memory, necessity, or all three together. No one announces this with drama at first. The mother feels a tightening and keeps moving. Another one comes. She pauses beside the wagon wheel, fingers pressed to the wood. Someone asks if she's tired, which is the kind of question that deserves a long silent stare. She says perhaps. Perhaps means much more than perhaps. A woman in the train notices, and her expression shifts. The message passes softly from one wagon to another, not shouted, because birth asks for speed but also for calm. The train may halt. It may not halt for long. That is one of the harsher truths. A large wagon company has animals to feed, water to reach, seasons to outrun, mountains to cross before snow. Yet a woman in labour cannot be hurried in the same way a loose wheel can be tightened. Men become awkward at the edges, suddenly fascinated by oxen, harness, weather, the horizon, anything that lets them be useful somewhere else. A few fetch water, someone gathers cloth, someone else builds up the fire. The baby already born may be handed to another woman, or to an older sibling with strict instructions that feel far too large for small hands. Privacy is assembled quickly. Blankets are hung from the wagon bows. A canvas flap is lowered. A shawl becomes a screen. The inside of the wagon, already cramped with supplies, becomes a birth room. It smells of dust, wool, old wood, and the sharp steam of water warmed in a kettle. Outside, you still hear the camp, because privacy does not mean silence. A mule brays at the worst possible moment. A child asks a question and is immediately moved away. Someone drops a pan. History is rarely polite enough to whisper. A strange little trail note survives in family memories and accounts. Babies born on the journey were sometimes given names connected to places, rivers, wagons, weather, or events of the day. A child might carry a memory of the trail in a name, as if the road itself had stood as godparent. Imagine arriving years later with a name that quietly says, "Yes, I was born near a muddy crossing while everyone was exhausted and the coffee was terrible." Not every family did this, of course, but the impulse is deeply human. When life interrupts hardship, people mark the spot. Inside the wagon, the mother breathes. The women around her speak softly. They have no modern monitors, no clean hospital bed, no bright instruments laid out under electric light. They have boiled water if fuel and time allow. Clean cloth if enough has survived the last wash. Scissors or a knife cleaned as well as possible. Thread, hands, memory, prayer, and practical courage. One woman supports her back. Another wipes her face. Another checks the kettle. The mother grips whatever she can blanket edge. another woman's wrist, the sideboard of the wagon that has carried flour and now carries a birth. The older baby may be nearby, confused by the sudden rearrangement of attention. Perhaps you hear a fretful cry from outside the wagon, where another woman bounces the child on her knee. This is not a tidy family scene painted in warm gold. It is layered need. One child entering the world, one child already demanding milk, cloth, warmth, and reassurance. One mother trying to cross a continent and her own physical limits at the same time. Historians have not fully settled how childbirth on the trail affected decisions about stopping, splitting from companies, or altering family routes, because many records soften the details or mention births only briefly. A diary might say, Mrs. Allen confined today, mother and child doing well, and then resume with the distance travelled. Beneath that neat sentence lies pain, risk, noise, fear, and a circle of women working in the dim shelter of a wagon. The written line is small. The event was not. When the baby arrives, the world narrows to breath. A first cry, thin and astonished, rises inside the canvas, outside. The camp seems to pause. Someone smiles despite exhaustion. Someone murmurs thanks. Someone cries quietly, maybe from relief, maybe from memory of another birth that didn't end so gently. The newborn is slippery, angry, alive, and immediately cold unless wrapped. Cloth comes forward. The mother reaches, trembling. The new child is placed against her skin, and the enormous road, for a few moments, becomes background. The work does not end there, because birth is not a curtain closing. The mother must rest. The newborn must nurse. The older baby must still be cared for. Bedding must be cleaned or hidden away. Water must be fetched again, if the train has stopped. People are already calculating the lost miles. It sounds cruel. But the season is a clock. Snow in the mountains is not sentimental. Rivers rise and fall. Grass for animals can vanish. A family may be granted a day, perhaps less, perhaps more if the company is kind and able. Often, movement resumes before anyone in a modern world would think it reasonable. And so, a mother who has given birth may soon be lying inside the wagon while the wheels begin again. The newborn is tucked near her. The older child fusses. The wagon rocks over ruts with no concern for soreness, stitches, milk coming in, fever, bleeding, or fear. Other women check on her when they can. They bring broth, coffee, clean cloth, advice, and the brisk tenderness of people who know that sympathy must also cook supper. Evening falls around the camp where a new baby has joined the road. The mother lies under blankets while the wagon canvas glows with firelight from outside. The newborn makes small, uncertain sounds, like a bird under leaves. The older baby sleeps near her knees, still part of the same fragile orbit. Outside, men speak more quietly than usual. A woman laughs softly, relieved. The oxen chew. The kettle ticks as it cools. You feel the story glide onward, not with triumph exactly, but with awe. The wagon that held dried apples, diapers, songs, and weather has now held birth. A family has gained another breathing soul without stopping the continent, without persuading the road to soften, without any guarantee beyond the next dawn. The mother closes her eyes, one hand on the newborn, one ear tuned to the older child, while the trail waits just beyond the canvas, patient, dusty, and already asking what she will do tomorrow. The trail waits beyond the canvas, and by morning it is asking again. Not politely. The wagons must move, the animals must be watered, the fire must be stirred into usefulness, and the babies, both old and new in their separate ways, must be watched with the close attention usually given to unstable bridges. A tiny body can change quickly out here. 1 hour the child is warm and sleepy. The next, too warm, too quiet, too limp, too restless. The mother feels these differences before anyone else notices. You walk beside her as she studies the baby's face in the dim wagon light. The cheeks are flushed, but perhaps that is only heat. The eyes look wet, but perhaps the child has cried. The mouth is dry. Or maybe the dust has fooled her. Frontier motherhood is full of such cruel little maybes. The road is long, and certainty is a luxury item, probably packed at the bottom of a trunk and then abandoned near the first steep hill. A well-established reality of overland travel is that disease was one of the greatest dangers on the trails, with illnesses such as cholera, dysentery, measles, whooping cough, and fevers appearing in emigrant accounts. Infants and young children were especially vulnerable. Poor sanitation, crowded camps, uncertain water, exhaustion, and limited medical care made sickness more frightening than many of the dangers later adventure stories prefer to highlight. A broken wheel is dramatic. A fever in a baby is quiet, and somehow worse. The mother touches the child's forehead with the inside of her wrist, then the neck, then the belly. She listens to the breathing. Is it fast? Is it rough? Does the cough come from the chest or only the throat irritated by dust? The baby turns away from the breast, and that refusal sends a cold thought through her. A baby who will not feed is not merely being difficult. Though babies do enjoy a little theatrical timing, it may be a warning. Around her, the wagon train continues its ordinary morning noises. Oxen snort, chains jangle, someone laughs at a spilled cup, someone else scolds a child for stepping too near the fire. Ordinary life feels almost rude when your own small world has narrowed to one hot forehead. The mother asks another woman to look. The woman steps close, smelling of smoke and soap, and lays a practiced hand on the baby. Her face gives away little. She has seen too much to comfort cheaply. Remedies come out, perhaps castor oil, perhaps paregoric, perhaps peppermint tea, catnip tea, willow bark, camphor, mustard plaster, or another household treatment carried from home in a carefully wrapped bottle or paper packet. Some remedies might soothe symptoms, some might do little, some could harm, especially when given to infants. But the mother does not have a pharmacy, a thermometer with calm numbers, or a doctor at the end of a phone. She has what the wagon carries, what other women advise, what memory offers, and what fear demands. One unusual piece of medical folk practice from the period is the use of charms, strings, beads, or small protective objects to guard babies during teething or illness. A child might wear something around the neck or wrist, meant to draw away pain, protect from harm, or satisfy inherited belief. Modern ears may lift an eyebrow, and fair enough. Still, when a baby burns with fever miles from help, the line between medicine, prayer, and hope becomes very thin. People reach for all three. The baby whimpers. The sound is weak. Not the strong complaint of hunger or annoyance. The mother loosens the wrap, then covers the child again when the wind changes. She tries a little water, drop by drop. She offers the breast. The baby latches briefly, then slips away. She rocks, hums, wipes the mouth, checks the diaper, studies the stool with the grim seriousness of a battlefield report. Diarrhea can be deadly here. It steals water from a body that has almost none to spare. Some historians now question how accurately trail diaries record infant illness, since women may have omitted intimate symptoms or described them in polite, general words like complaint, weakness, or bowel trouble. Those small phrases can hide whole nights of terror. A mother might sit awake, counting breaths, changing cloth after cloth, wondering whether the creek water was bad, whether the heat was too much, whether she should have stopped sooner, whether any choice would have mattered. The page may say the child was poorly. The night itself was longer than that. Teething adds another layer of confusion. A drooling, fretful baby might be teething, or ill, or both. Gums swell, sleep breaks. The child chews on cloth, fingers, a smooth piece of wood, or whatever is judged safe enough. In the 19th century, teething was often blamed for a wide range of infant troubles, sometimes more than it deserved. It became an explanation people could hold when other causes were invisible. The mother rubs the gums gently, and the baby bites down with surprising force. Even while suffering, infants remain committed to betrayal. If the sickness spreads through the train, fear becomes communal. You see it in the way women keep children closer, in the way water is boiled more carefully when fuel allows, in the way camps avoid certain pools or move away from foul ground. But wagons also gather people together. Fires are shared, buckets are dipped, children play near one another before anyone knows who is ill. Disease travels quietly through kindness, convenience, and necessity. The mother may be advised to keep the baby warm, or cool, to dose, to wait, to pray, to stop the wagon, to keep moving toward better water. Each suggestion contains someone's memory of a child who recovered, or a child who did not. Advice is never just advice on the trail, it carries grief under its shawl. By afternoon, the baby sleeps heavily. The mother does not trust it. She lifts the blanket edge and watches the chest rise. Once, twice, again. The wagon rocks, and she braces the little body with her arm. Outside, the landscape passes in a blur of grass, dust, and shimmering heat. Inside, time is not measured in miles. It is measured in breaths taken, milk swallowed, fever rising or easing beneath her palm. The fever breaks near evening. Perhaps. Sweat dampens the baby's hair. The child stirs and gives a thin, offended cry that sounds. To the mother, like music played by an angel with poor manners, she offers the breast again. This time the baby feeds longer. Not strongly, but enough. Enough becomes a holy word on the trail. Enough water, enough warmth, enough cloth, enough strength to reach morning. The camp settles under a lavender sky. A kettle steams. Wet rags hang near the fire. The medicine bottle is wrapped again. Not with confidence, exactly, but with gratitude that it was not needed more. The mother leans against the wagon wheel, baby asleep against her chest, and lets her eyes close for one breath, then another, around her. The evening sounds soften. Someone murmurs a prayer. Someone stirs beans. Somewhere a child coughs, and every mother hears it. You stay with her in that listening silence. Illness has not vanished from the road. It waits in water, dust, weather, and human closeness. But tonight, this baby breathes steadily. The mother's hand rests lightly on the small back, rising and falling with each breath. As the wagon train gathers itself for another day it has not yet earned, the baby breathes steadily through the night, and with morning comes the quiet relief no one wants to name too loudly. Relief can tempt fate, or so people sometimes feel when life has been balanced on such a narrow ledge. The mother does not announce that everything is fine. She simply rises, checks the child again, folds the damp rag from last night, and accepts a tin cup of coffee from another woman who has noticed more than she says. That cup matters. The hand that passes it matters. On the trail. Motherhood may be intimate, but it is rarely private. Around the wagons, women see one another at their strongest and least graceful. They see milk stains, grief, temper, fear, wet laundry, burnt biscuits, stubborn babies, and the small collapse that comes after 3 nights without real sleep. If they are kind, they pretend not to see too much. If they are practical, they help anyway. You walk near the morning fire as several women gather. Their skirts brush wet grass. Their hands move through tasks while their voices travel lightly over them. Someone kneads dough on a board balanced across a wagon box. Someone patches a torn sleeve. Someone nurses a baby beneath a shawl while scolding an older child with impressive accuracy. Someone asks after the fever from the night before, and the mother answers, better, I think. The I think carries the whole frontier inside it. One reliable truth of wagon train life is that emigrant companies often depended on cooperation among families for travel, protection, labour, and decision-making. Women's work formed a major part of that cooperation, though it was not always written into formal rules. Shared cooking, nursing advice, laundry help, childcare, tending the sick, and preparing the dead all belonged to the social world of the trail. The official captain might call the route, but many days were held together by women passing a cup, a cloth, or a warning. Advice begins before breakfast has fully admitted defeat. Keep the baby shaded today. Try a little warm tea if the cough returns. Do not let him chew that filthy rag. Rub the gums with a clean finger. No, not that remedy. My aunt swore it made things worse. A younger mother listens, tired and grateful, but also perhaps a little stung. Advice can feel like rescue. It can also feel like judgment wearing a bonnet. There is tenderness here, but not softness in the modern sentimental sense. These women are exhausted. Their feet ache, their backs hurt, their own children tug at them. They may miss homes, mothers, sisters, gardens, church bells, and this simple miracle of a table that does not have to be packed every morning. Yet when a baby cries, heads turn. When a woman looks pale, another steps closer. Care is exchanged in small, brisk pieces, not always with sweetness, but with depth. A curious social detail from emigrant accounts is that gossip could travel along a wagon train almost as efficiently as dust. Who packed too much furniture? Who cannot bake without burning? Who is kind to her animals? Who lets her children run wild? Who cried last night? Who might be expecting? Gossip sounds petty, and sometimes it was, because humans did not become noble just because they owned oxen. But gossip also carried information. It warned, ranked, protected, and connected. It told women who could be trusted with a baby, and who should perhaps not be trusted with a spoon. You settle beside the wagons and hear the layered music of female talk. It is half instruction, half memory. One woman says her third child had a fever just like that and recovered after sweating through the night. Another says to keep the belly warm. Another says not too warm. Someone mentions a doctor back home who knew less than her grandmother. Someone laughs. The baby, now calmer, blinks into the morning as if personally responsible for convening this council. Contemporary historians continue to ask how much power women truly held within wagon trains. Since male leaders often controlled formal decisions while women managed the daily systems that made travel possible, the answer depends on where you look, at votes, rules, and trail leadership. Men often dominate the record, at firesides, wash places, sick beds, births, and food preparation. Women's authority becomes impossible to ignore. The mother with the baby may not decide the route, but she may decide whether another family's child receives broth, whether a sick woman is watched through the night, or whether dangerous water is avoided because she has seen what it did to an infant. Not all relationships are warm. Close quarters sharpen irritation. A baby crying in the night can anger neighbours who also need sleep. A woman who is too proud to accept help may be resented. A woman who asks too often may be whispered about. Cultural differences matter too. Families from different regions, religions, languages, and classes may travel together uneasily. One mother's common practice is another's alarming habit. Should a baby be tightly wrapped or given room? Should a toddler be weaned early or kept at the breast? Should illness be treated with herbs, patent medicine, prayer, or all of them in a brave little pile? Agreement is not guaranteed. Still, the trail creates dependence. Today one woman lends soap, tomorrow another lends a needle. A third watches the baby while the mother kneels at the creek. Someone shares dried apples with a teething child. Someone takes a turn walking beside a wagon so a mother can ride briefly with a sleeping infant. These gestures are not always recorded, but you can feel them in the basic arithmetic of survival. One woman alone cannot do everything. Several women together still cannot do everything. But they can do more, and sometimes more is enough. At midday, the train halts near a thin stream. The women drift toward water with cloths, kettles, cups, and children following like untidy ducklings. The mother washes the baby's face, then her own hands. Another woman holds the child for a moment, bouncing gently, making a soft clicking sound with her tongue. The baby studies this new face. Perhaps there is a smile, perhaps it is gas. The great deceiver of adults, either way. The women laugh quietly, for a moment. The wagon train feels almost domestic, not easy, never that, but social. A small travelling village with canvas roofs and moving walls. The women exchange recipes adjusted for scarcity, remedies adjusted for fear, and memories adjusted for homesickness. They ask where the other is from. They compare the price of flour at the last supply point. They discuss a woman ahead who gave birth near the river, and another who may not last the week without rest. Their voices lower, then lift again toward ordinary matters, because sorrow cannot be held at full volume all day. The mother takes the baby back. The child smells faintly of another woman's apron, smoke and starch and creek water. This does not bother her. It comforts her. Her baby has been held by someone else and returned safe. That simple exchange becomes a thread in the fabric of the train. As evening settles, the women's network shifts around the fires. One brings a ladle of broth. Another offers a strip of cleaner cloth. Another says she will listen if the fever returns. No grand speech follows. The mother nods. Her eyes shine in the firelight, but she does not cry, or perhaps she does later. Turn toward the wagon wall where only the baby can hear. You feel the road moving through these women even while they sit still. It has scraped them, wearied them, revealed them. It has made neighbours into witnesses. Tomorrow there will be new irritations, new advice, new judgments, new kindnesses offered with rough hands and tired eyes. The baby sleeps against the mother's breast while women speak softly around the camp, weaving a loose net of care beneath the wide, dark sky. The loose net of care holds through the evening, but by morning the family circle tightens again. The baby belongs to many watching eyes. Yes, but also to one crowded wagon, one tired mother, one father with dust in his beard, and a scattering of siblings whose usefulness depends heavily on age, mood, and whether a beetle has recently wandered by. Around the fire, duties begin to divide themselves with the blunt logic of hunger. Someone must stir the mush, someone must fetch water, someone must gather the bedding, someone must keep the baby from eating ash. Which seems obvious, but babies are bold philosophers of texture. You stand near the wagon as the father lifts a yoke with a low grunt. His shoulders are stiff from yesterday, his hands are cracked, darkened with dirt that has become nearly permanent. He glances toward the mother as she adjusts the baby against her hip. There is affection there, perhaps worry too, but the morning does not give him time to stand and feel things poetically. The oxen must be hitched, the wheel must be checked, a loose trace must be mended before it becomes a bigger problem in a worse place, which is the trail's favourite style of comedy. One well-supported feature of overland travel is that children worked. Older boys and girls herded livestock, gathered fuel, carried water, watched younger siblings, collected buffalo chips for fires, helped cook, and walked long miles with the adults. Childhood did not disappear, but it stretched around labour. A 10-year-old might be told to mind the baby while the mother kneads dough or washes cloth. An 8-year-old might carry a cup of water with the solemn care of someone transporting royal treasure, spilling only half, which counts as success on uneven ground. The father's role in baby care can be complicated. He may hold the child while the mother works. He may rock the baby at night when crying threatens the whole camp's patience. He may carve a toy from scrap wood, or lift the child high to make a tired laugh burst out. He may also be absent inside his own labour, swallowed by animals, repairs, scouting, guard duty, and decisions about the route. The trail does not divide work neatly into gentle categories. It simply creates too much of it and lets families negotiate the damage. You watch him take the baby for a moment. The child stares at him with deep suspicion, as though this dusty man has applied for a position without references. He bounces the baby awkwardly, then finds a rhythm. The mother uses those few minutes to tie up a food bundle, wipe a pot, and speak sharply to an older child who is stepping too close to the wagon wheel. The father hums something tuneless. The baby blinks. Maybe this will work, maybe not. The baby's face wrinkles, a cry rises. The father, humbled by an opponent under 15 pounds, hands the child back with a look that says he has faced rivers with more confidence. There is a charming oddity tucked into many family memories of frontier life fathers and older siblings sometimes fashion toys from whatever the trail offered. A rag ball, a corncob doll, a smooth stick, a button on string, a bit of leather, a carved animal that looked only vaguely like the intended creature. A baby might be distracted by a spoon, a tin cup, or a scrap of bright cloth. You do not need a toy shop when the child is delighted by stealing the very object you most need at that second. This, too, is timeless. Sibling care is both help and hazard. An older girl may carry a baby with surprising skill, one hip lifted, one hand supporting the small back, imitating the mother's movements so closely it aches to watch. She has learned by seeing. She may sing the same snatches of song, use the same hush, sway in the same rhythm that continues even when the wagon stands still, but she is still a child. Her attention wanders, her arms tire, her patience thins. She may love the baby fiercely and still resent being made into a small deputy mother before breakfast. An older boy may be less expected to tend the infant, depending on the family, but necessity can rearrange custom. If the mother is ill, if the father needs help with the team, if the girls are gathering fuel or washing, the boy may find a baby placed in his arms. He may hold it stiffly at first, as if babies are explosive frontier equipment. Then, gradually, he learns the trick of supporting the head, the bounce of the knees, the way a finger offered to a tiny fist can buy several minutes of peace. Researchers have not reached one tidy answer about how far the trail changed gender roles inside emigrant families, because evidence points in several directions at once. Men sometimes cooked, carried babies, or nursed the sick when circumstances forced them. Women sometimes drove teams, guarded goods, made route judgments, and managed animals. Yet many families also tried to preserve familiar divisions of labour, even when the landscape kept laughing at those divisions. The baby, being practical, accepts care from whoever has warm arms and milk nearby. Though milk does narrow the candidate list, hired hands or unrelated young men in the party might also become part of the baby's orbit, usually indirectly. They lift heavy items so a mother can reach a bundle. They fetch water when a child is sick. They stand guard while families sleep. Occasionally they amuse a toddler with a whistle or a coin trick, then look embarrassed when the child wants it repeated forever. A wagon train creates temporary kinship, but not without tension. Trust must be earned. A mother watches who handles the baby, how gently, how cleanly, how attentively. By midday, the family has fallen into motion. The father walks near the oxen, his gaze shifting between trail and team. The mother walks closer to the wagon, baby wrapped against her. A daughter carries a small pail. A son trails behind, driving loose cattle with more enthusiasm than strategy. Everyone is tired, and yet the baby's needs keep interrupting the larger machinery. Stop a moment. Shift the blanket, find the cup, change the cloth. Lift the child from sun to shade. Hand the baby to sister. Take the baby back because sister has found a grasshopper and abandoned government. The wagon itself becomes a family workplace, at rest. Its sideboard is a changing table, a counter, a bench, a shelf, and sometimes a wall to lean on while emotion quietly leaks from your face. In motion, it is storage and shelter. But also a reminder that each family member's labour affects the baby. If father fails to secure the load, something may fall. If a sibling forgets where the clean cloths are, the mother loses time. If nobody fills the water barrel well enough, feeding and washing become harder. Infant care is not separate from wagon management. It is woven through every rope and box. Evening brings the reckoning of small debts. The father takes the baby again while the mother stirs supper. This time the child is sleepy enough to accept him. He sits on an overturned bucket, one large hand spread across the tiny back, and looks toward the darkening grass. Perhaps he speaks softly of the land ahead, of the farm they might claim, of a house with a real floor, of fruit trees, of a bed that remains in one place. The baby does not understand the words, only the vibration of the chest. Nearby, the older children lean against the wagon, half proud, half resentful, already shaped by the labour of the day. They have carried water, fetched cloth, listened for cries, and learned that survival is made of chores too small to become legend. The mother watches them all in the firelight: husband, children, baby, wagon, animals. This is not the tidy family portrait later generations may imagine. It is a tired little system of hands passing need from one person to another. The baby sighs in sleep. The father stills. The mother lowers her voice. The siblings quiet. For once. As if the whole camp has received a royal command from a sleeping infant. Above the wagon, stars sharpen. Tomorrow. The work will scatter again across gender, age, strength, habit, and necessity. Tonight, for a few breaths, everyone belongs to the same hush, gathered around the smallest person on the trail. The hush around the sleeping infant lingers into the morning, then thins as the wagons begin their slow complaint again. Wheels turn, oxen lean into their yokes, children scatter into tasks. The mother lifts the baby close and looks beyond the familiar circle of canvas, animals, and family faces. Out there, across the grass or near the river timber, other families have lived, travelled, hunted, planted, traded, raised children, buried elders, and told stories for generations beyond counting. The trail is not empty, no matter how often later maps pretend it is. You feel the air change when native people are seen near the route. Sometimes it is a distant group on horseback, moving with a calm that makes the emigrants look like a collection of overloaded cupboards. Sometimes it is a family camp glimpsed near water. Sometimes visitors approach to trade, curious about wagons, livestock, cloth, metal goods, or food. The mother's arms tighten around the baby. Fear, curiosity, prejudice, and practical need all gather in the same breath. A careful historical truth belongs here. The overland trails crossed the homelands and travel routes of many indigenous nations, including peoples such as the Pawnee, Lakota, Cheyenne, Shoshone, Nez Perce, Ute, and many others, depending on the route. Encounters varied widely. Some were peaceful exchanges, some involved guidance, trade, hired assistance, or mutual observation. Some were tense, shaped by hunger, disease, theft, violence, broken promises, and the pressure of settler expansion. There is no single mood for all these meetings. The frontier was not one scene. It was many worlds being forced into contact. The baby, unhelpfully, chooses this moment to fuss. A small cry rises from the mother's shoulder just as a few native women come closer to the wagon line with items to trade. Perhaps dressed skins, moccasins, berries, roots, beadwork, or baskets, depending on place and season. The mother shifts the child and tries to hush the sound. One of the visiting women looks at the baby. Her expression may be unreadable to the emigrant mother, though not necessarily unfriendly. Babies invite recognition across language. They are demanding, fragile, sticky little diplomats. You notice how bodies speak when words do not. A nod toward the child, a gesture to shade, a touch to one's own back, showing how to carry. Perhaps a smile when the baby's face appears beneath the shawl. Perhaps the emigrant mother smiles back, stiff at first. Then more genuinely when the baby stops crying long enough to stare. Around them, men may bargain for a horse or argue about prices. Children peer from behind skirts. Dogs sniff. The oxen chew as if all human cultures are equally noisy. In some indigenous communities, babies were carried in cradleboards, beautifully practical devices that supported the infant and could be worn, leaned upright, or secured during work. Designs varied by nation, materials, and tradition. Some emigrant women noticed these methods. A few adopted or adapted parts of what they saw, especially the idea that a baby could be safely carried while the caregiver's hands remained freer. Of course, observing is not the same as understanding. A cradleboard was not just equipment. It belonged to a web of family knowledge, craft, comfort, and cultural meaning. One lesser-known detail worth holding gently is that some emigrant accounts describe native women seeming amused or puzzled by Euro-American infant clothing. With its layers, caps, gowns, pins, and fussing. And honestly, you can see why. A pioneer baby might be bundled like a small anxious parcel, while an indigenous mother nearby uses a carrying system shaped by local materials and long practice. Each side may look at the other and think, interesting, but why are you doing it like that? History is full of people silently reviewing one another's parenting techniques. The emigrant mother may learn something without naming it as learning. She watches how a native woman carries a baby on her back or secured to a board. She notices the child upright, able to see the world, shaded in a certain way, snug but not lost in loose bedding. Later, back at the wagon, she adjusts her own cloth sling or tightens a wrap differently. Perhaps she would never admit the idea came from that encounter. Perhaps she would. The trail carries knowledge in quiet ways, through glances as much as through speech. Writers of Western history still wrestle with how to interpret these moments of exchange. Since emigrant diaries often filter indigenous childcare through fear, condescension, admiration, or misunderstanding. A diary might praise a native mother's skill in one line, then repeat a cruel stereotype in the next. It may describe cradleboards as strange while missing their elegance. It may treat native women as scenery on a settler journey, rather than as mothers raising children in lands being transformed around them. The record tells us something, but it also shows us where the writer could not fully see. The baby grows quiet against the mother's shoulder. Perhaps the rhythm of voices soothes the child. Perhaps hunger is briefly forgotten. A native child nearby watches the wagon baby with open curiosity. The two children stare at each other across a distance adults have filled with fear. Politics, trade, and loss. For a moment, there's only mutual suspicion of the other baby's hat. That may be the most honest international relation of the day. Trade continues. A woman from the wagon train offers needles, cloth, bread, coffee, or small goods. Someone else trades for moccasins, which may be more comfortable than worn boots. A mother may seek information about water, grass, or safe passage. In some places, indigenous guides or ferrymen help emigrants across rivers or through difficult terrain. In other places, both sides are wary, and with good reason. Settler movement brings disease, damaged resources, and violence. Native resistance grows from defense of home, not from the simple villainy later bedtime myths sometimes preferred. Yes, even sleepy history has to be honest, just softly honest. Fear inside the wagon train can spread quickly. A rumour travels faster than a mule with a burr under its tail. Someone says there are hostile riders ahead. Someone else says a child was frightened. Someone else says nothing happened at all, but says it with enough drama to ruin everyone's digestion. Mothers pull children closer, men check firearms. Yet most encounters on the major overland trails were not attacks. Despite how later popular stories exaggerated danger from native peoples, while often downplaying the dangers emigrants themselves posed to indigenous communities. The baby, still centered in the mother's arms, becomes part of that anxious watching. At camp that evening, the mother rewraps the child, thinking of what she saw, the way another woman's hands moved, the way a baby rode securely against a back, the way children watched without needing a shared language. The fire pops, the baby startles, then settles, nearby. Someone dismisses the day's visitors with a careless remark. Another traveller says they were kind, another says nothing. The mother looks at her child and perhaps feels a question too complicated to say aloud. What does it mean to bring your baby into someone else's homeland and call the journey your future? The wagons rest under a wide sky that belonged to many stories long before this train arrived. The mother does what mothers do in every culture around her. She checks warmth. She touches the baby's cheek. She listens to breathing across the darkness. Somewhere beyond the camp glow, another mother may be doing the same. Different language, different shelter, different inherited wisdom, but the same small vigilance. The road moves on at dawn, yet this glimpse stays with you. A quiet reminder that childcare on the frontier was never only inside one wagon. It unfolded among peoples watching, borrowing, fearing, judging, and sometimes recognizing one another in the face of a child. The memory of that other mother beyond the camp glow travels with you into the next day, tucked somewhere between the baby's blanket and the mother's thoughts. The wagons move through a country of long grass and low voices, until the land ahead begins to dip. You smell water before you see it, damp earth, willow, mud stirred by hooves, a coolness rising through the heat. The baby sleeps against the mother's shoulder, unaware that the whole company has begun to tighten with the same nervous anticipation. A river crossing is coming. At first, it looks almost peaceful. The water shines under the sky, wide and slow in the centre, whispering along the muddy edges. Birds lift from the reeds. Cottonwoods lean toward their own reflections. The baby sighs, warm and heavy, and the mother adjusts the blanket under the child's chin. Then the wagons stop, and the calm picture begins to break apart. Men walk down to test the bank. Oxen snort at the smell. Children are told to stay back, which naturally makes the river instantly more interesting to them. Women begin lifting, tying, wrapping, protecting. A river is scenery only until you must put everything you own into it. One widely recorded feature of overland migration is that river crossings were among the most dangerous and disruptive moments of the journey. Families used ferries where they existed, hired local operators, built rafts, corked wagon boxes, floated wagons, or forded with teams when water seemed low enough. Conditions changed with weather, season, current, and luck. A crossing that was manageable one week could be deadly the next, for a mother with an infant. The river is not an adventure, it is a long wet question with no gentle answer. The baby wakes when the wagon stops. The cry begins small, then rises as the mother's body tenses. Babies are excellent readers of adult panic, though terrible at offering solutions. She bounces the child once, then twice, murmuring nonsense into the soft hair. Around her, the camp becomes a workshop. Bedding is rolled high. Flour sacks are lifted away from the floor. Loose items are tied down. Clothing bundles are wrapped in oilcloth if the family has any, or in whatever cloth might slow the water long enough to feel hopeful. The wagon bed may be prepared to float by sealing cracks with tar, pitch, grease, or soaked materials. Sometimes the wheels are removed, sometimes goods are ferried first, sometimes people cross separately, Sometimes everyone simply has to trust the team, the driver, and the current, which is a very fancy way of saying everyone quietly worries. The mother watches the water pull at sticks near the bank. It does not look strong at first, but neither does a sleeping baby until you try to take away a spoon. A peculiar detail from many river crossings is that people sometimes placed babies and small children in feather beds, boxes, tubs, or raised bundles during the crossing, trying to keep them dry and above sudden water. It sounds almost comic until you imagine the mother's hands arranging the bedding, testing the sides, and wondering whether this little nest will remain a nest once the wagon tilts. The frontier has a talent for making absurdity and terror share a blanket. If there is a ferry, the waiting can take hours or days. Wagons line the bank, animals graze restlessly, children grow sticky with mud. Fires smoke in damp air, mothers nurse, change cloths, and try to keep babies from overheating in the sun or chilling in the river breeze. The delay may feel like a gift at first. No walking for a bit, no wheels grinding. But delay also brings crowding, uncertainty, and rumours. Someone says the ferry rope is worn. Someone says a wagon tipped yesterday. Someone says the crossing is easy if people do not act foolish, which is exactly the kind of comment made by someone not holding a baby. The mother uses the waiting time to prepare. She chooses the driest blanket. She wraps the baby close, then loosens the cloth because the day is warm, then tightens it again because the river wind is cool. She moves extra baby cloths into a higher bundle. She checks the medicine packet. She tucks the small garments near her own body if she must. The baby's world, once more, is reduced to reachable things: warm wrap, clean cloth, milk, a mother's shoulder. Historical interpreters continue to differ over how emigrant women understood river crossings in their own writings, because some described them as thrilling obstacles, while others wrote of them with dread, exhaustion, or blunt practicality. Much depends on the writer, the river, the outcome, and what she felt free to admit. A father might record the technical success of floating a wagon. A mother might remember the soaked blanket, the baby's scream, and the terrible second when water rose around her ankles. Now the turn comes, the wagon is ready. The father stands near the team, jaw set. Other men gather with ropes. Women speak in low, quick phrases. The mother climbs into the wagon or onto the ferry platform, depending on the method, holding the baby tight against her chest. She can feel the child's heartbeat, rapid as a trapped bird, or perhaps that is her own. It hardly matters. The two hearts seem to answer one another. The crossing begins with a lurch. Mud sucks at the wheels. The oxen lean forward, their bodies straining, horns tipping, hooves searching beneath brown water. The wagon tilts. Inside, tied goods shift and thump. The baby wakes fully and cries into the mother's shawl. Water slaps against wood. A man shouts. Another answers. The current presses sideways. The mother lowers her face over the baby's head, making a roof of herself. Everything smells stronger at the waterline. Wet hide, river mud, fierce sweat, damp canvas, the sharp green odour of crushed reeds. A floating branch bumps the wagon side with a hollow knock that makes everyone flinch. The baby's cry is swallowed by the river noise, then returns in the small hollow beneath the mother's chin. She cannot help pull the rope. She cannot guide the oxen. She cannot command the current. Her work is smaller and absolute: do not let go. If the family crosses by ferry, the movement may be smoother but no less tense. The platform shifts under the wagon weight. The river slides past, dark and muscular. The mother sits very still, because stillness feels like a contribution. She watches the far bank as if staring hard enough can bring it closer. The baby's fist clutches her dress. That tiny grip, useless in practical terms, feels like a vow. Halfway across, time lengthens. You hear every creak, every splash, every breath. Someone on the bank calls encouragement. Someone else tells a child to hush. The mother feels the baby's blanket growing damp at one edge and adjusts it with her thumb, even now, while the river takes up the whole world. Childcare continues in miniature. Cover the ear, shield the face, keep the mouth clear. Feel for warmth, count breaths. Then, gradually. The far bank rises. The oxen find shallower footing. Mud churns. Wheels drag. Men pull at ropes. The wagon climbs with a sucking, grinding sound, as though the river is reluctant to release its prize. A cheer breaks from someone nearby, not loud enough to tempt arrogance, but enough to loosen the air. The mother does not cheer, not yet. She waits until the wagon steadies, until her feet are on ground that does not move, until the baby is still in her arms, wet at the edges but alive and furious. That cry, once unbearable, is suddenly welcome. A loud baby is a breathing baby. The mother laughs once, breathlessly, and presses her mouth to the child's hair. Around her, the work resumes immediately. Wet blankets must be spread, axles checked, flour inspected, animals calmed, children counted. Always count the children. The river has been crossed. Yes, but the river has also entered everything. Mud on hems, water in shoes, damp in bedding, a chill in the baby's wrap. By evening, the wagons stand on the far bank, and fires glow under dripping cloth. The mother changes the baby into the driest thing she can find. The child lies on a folded blanket near the fire, red-faced from crying, blinking at the light with deep suspicion toward all waterways. Steam rises from wool. Men talk over the crossing again, already turning fear into a story. Women wring cloth, warm hands, and check the children who are too quiet afterward. The mother sits close to the fire, baby against her breast, and listens to the river behind them. It sounds gentler now, which is frankly rude. The current murmurs in the dark as if it has done nothing unusual. But you know better. She knows better. The baby sleeps at last, wrapped in smoke-warmed cloth, while the road beyond the river waits, damp, dark, and ready to pull the wagon onward. The river keeps murmuring behind the camp, pretending innocence, while the wagons settle on the far bank like tired animals. Night does not arrive all at once. It gathers by degrees. First the blue shadows under the wagon boxes, then the purple dark beneath the trees, then the firelight brightening against faces as the sky gives up its last pale colour. The baby sleeps for a little while in smoke-warmed cloth, one fist pressed near the mouth, as if still holding a private complaint against rivers everywhere. You sit beside the mother in the dim glow. Her skirt is damp at the hem. Her sleeves smell faintly of muddy water. Her hair has escaped its pins in soft wisps around her face. She does not have the look of someone resting. She has the look of someone preparing the next round of tasks before the day notices she's tired. This is how evening works on the trail. The wagons stop. But the women rarely do. The road pauses, and domestic life rises out of boxes like a stern little ghost. A well-known part of wagon train routine is that camps are often arranged with practical concerns in mind, sometimes with wagons drawn into loose circles or lines depending on terrain. Danger, livestock needs, and company custom. The perfect circle of every Western painting is not always the daily truth, but the idea of arranging wagons for shelter, order, and control of animals has roots in real practice, within that shifting camp shape. Mothers created bedtime for children who had spent the day being jolted, carried, fed, frightened, overheated, chilled, and covered in dust. So, just a calm little evening. Really, the mother begins with fire, not because fire is romantic, although it looks lovely from a distance, but because fire means boiled water, warmed food, dried cloth, light to mend by, and heat against night damp. Fuel may be scarce, on open plains, Families often burned buffalo chips, dried animal dung that caught well when wood was limited. There is your peaceful bedtime image stars overhead, baby in arms, and everyone quietly grateful for flammable prairie patties. History does enjoy humbling our interior design preferences. A kettle is set near the coals, the baby wakes, fussing softly. And the mother lifts the child into her lap. She checks the diaper first, because one learns priorities. Then she offers milk, turning slightly away from the fire smoke, around her. The camp is a collage of small sounds beans being stirred, harness leather dropped onto the ground, children whispering when they are supposed to be silent, a man coughing, an ox tugging at grass, a wet cloth snapping as someone shakes it open to dry. Night rituals are built from repetition. Feed the baby, wipe the face, change the cloth, warm the feet, rub dust from the tiny creases at the neck, shake out the blanket, search for the pin, find the pin in exactly the place it was not meant to be, mutter something uncharitable about pins, softly, because the baby's almost asleep. These little acts are not decorations added to survival. They are survival made small enough to hold. There may be prayer. Many emigrant families prayed in camp, alone or together, depending on custom, religion, mood, and exhaustion. A mother might whisper words over the baby while smoothing the blanket. She might ask for safe water, strong animals, healthy children, a clear pass through the mountains, or simply one night with no fever. A prayer on the trail can be grand theology, but it can also be a tired woman asking God to please let the baby stay asleep until dawn. This is a very practical branch of devotion. Here is an odd and tender detail from domestic life that travelled west. Some mothers brought tiny keepsakes for babies, such as a lock of hair tied in thread, a small family charm, a scrap from a grandmother's dress, or a little book too delicate for the road, but carried anyway. These objects had no survival value if you measured only calories, warmth, or weight. Yet they helped stitch the child to a family story larger than the wagon. A baby who owns almost nothing may still carry a piece of memory. The older children gather near the fire, drawn by food and light. One leans against the mother's knee, sticky, tired, and pretending not to be jealous of the baby. Another asks whether tomorrow will be easier. Adults develop an impressive ability to avoid answering that question directly. The mother says something like, "We shall see," or perhaps, "If the road is good, the road." Listening from the dark offers no guarantee. Academic interpreters remain divided about how much bedtime rituals soften the trauma of migration for children, since some records suggest families preserve songs, prayers, and stories, while others reveal exhaustion so deep that routine nearly collapsed. Both can be true in the same camp. A mother may sing one night and fall asleep in her clothes the next. She may tell a story while mending a tear, then snap at a child who asks for another. Tenderness and irritation sit close together when everyone is hungry and damp. The baby grows heavy with milk. The mother shifts the child to her shoulder and pats gently. The small back rises under her palm. A burp comes, solemn and ridiculous. The mother smiles despite herself. The baby startles at the sound of a pan falling near another fire, then settles again when she hums. You recognize the hum now. It has moved through rain, fever, river noise, and evening. Not the same tune every time, perhaps, but the same low promise: I am here. I am here. I am here. When the meal is ready, she eats awkwardly with one hand while holding the baby in the other arm. A spoonful of beans, a piece of bread, coffee gone lukewarm, smoke in her eyes. The baby's head lolls against her sleeve. Someone offers to take the child, and perhaps she agrees for a moment, long enough to stretch her fingers and eat with both hands like a person from a lost civilization. Then the baby fusses, and back the child comes, because infants have strong opinions about staffing. After supper, The mending begins. Firelight is not ideal for sewing, but the day has taken the daylight for other labours. The mother threads a needle and patches a tiny garment, then a larger stocking, then a tear in her own sleeve if she has the energy. The baby lies beside her on a folded blanket, wrapped securely. Face turned toward the warmth. Every so often she reaches down to touch the child's chest. Not enough to wake, just enough to know. The camp stories begin softly. A man remembers a town back east. A woman tells of a neighbour who crossed the year before and found good land. Someone mentions a grave seen beside the trail. And the voice is lower. Then a child asks for the funny story about the mule that stole biscuits, and laughter returns, tired but real. The baby hears none of the meanings, only tone, fire crackle, low voices, cloth rustle, the safe thunder of familiar bodies nearby. At last. Bedding is arranged. The mother prepares the baby's place near her own, protected from drafts as much as possible, not too close to stray sparks, not where someone will step in the dark, not beneath a drip if the canvas still holds river damp. The precision is almost ceremonial. Blanket folded, cloth within reach, cup nearby, shawl rolled, baby lowered carefully. Wait, listen. The child sighs, the mother freezes, another sigh, no cry. She lies down beside the baby in her clothes, because changing into night clothes sounds like a luxury invented by people with walls. The ground is uneven beneath the bedding. The wagon canvas smells of smoke, river, wool, and the day's fatigue. Outside, the fire settles into red eyes. Someone makes one last trip to check animals. A child turns in sleep and mutters. The mother's hand rests near the baby, close enough to feel movement. You listen with her as the camp loosens into night. The river behind them is softer now. The wagons creak as they cool. Insects begin their thin silver music. Far off, an animal calls, and then the dark folds over the sound. The rituals are complete for tonight. Imperfect but sufficient. The baby is fed, changed, warmed, watched, and held inside the small circle of a mother's care. Tomorrow will ask again, but not yet, for now. The fire breathes lower, the camp grows still, and the road waits outside the blanket edge. The road waits outside the blanket edge, and morning finds it exactly where you left it. Patient, dusty, and completely uninterested in whether anyone slept well. The baby wakes with a small hungry sound, and the mother reaches before her eyes are fully open, around the camp. Breakfast begins as a negotiation between appetite and supplies. Flour is scooped, coffee is measured with caution. Bacon grease is saved like treasure. Cornmeal slides into a pot with water, becoming mush that can feed a family, soothe an older baby, and test everyone's capacity for pretending they enjoy repetition. Food on the trail is never only food, it is weight, planning, weather, animals, fire, time, and luck. You taste it in the dry edge of hard bread, in beans that take forever to soften, in bacon smoky enough to perfume every blanket, in dried fruit guarded against both spoilage and children. The baby watches the mother's hands with solemn fascination. At this age, everything edible and inedible deserves investigation. A crumb, a button, a pebble, a piece of thread. The mouth is the baby's research department, and frankly, it has alarming funding. A basic truth of the overland journey is that emigrant families relied heavily on preserved staples such as flour, cornmeal, bacon, beans, rice, dried fruit, coffee, sugar or molasses when available, and whatever fresh food could be hunted, gathered, traded, or purchased along the route. Supplies had to last between outfitting towns and trading posts. Babies complicated that arithmetic. They did not eat like adults, yet their needs shaped every pot, every cup of water, every spoonful cooled before being offered. The mother nurses first if the baby is still mostly fed by milk, if the child is older. She may soften bread in milk, broth, or water, or stir a little cornmeal mush until it cools enough for a tender mouth. The spoon is tin, perhaps worn smooth at the edge. The baby opens eagerly, then makes a face of profound betrayal. Cornmeal again, Western expansion may have many themes. But for this child, one theme is definitely mush. Milk is uncertain. Some families drive cows, but a milk cow on the trail is both blessing and burden. She must graze, drink, keep up, and avoid injury. If she gives milk, the baby may receive a little extra nourishment, though keeping milk sweet in heat is difficult. If she stops giving milk, the family loses a comfort they may have counted on. Goats sometimes appear in accounts too. Hardy and useful, though not every family brings one. Every animal added to the company adds labour, and every labour already has tired hands waiting behind it. There is a small, curious food habit from the period that feels almost cosy until you imagine the fly's mothers might chew tougher food first, then give the softened portion to a baby or toddler. A practice seen in many places before modern prepared infant foods. It was practical when teeth were few and utensils limited. Modern listeners may gently recoil, which is fair. But the 19th century would like to remind you that it did not have tiny jars of strained carrots with cheerful labels. It had mothers, mouths, spoons, and necessity. The mother feeds slowly, scraping a bit of mush from the baby's chin and offering it again because waste is not cute out here. A fly lands. She waves it away. Another arrives, because flies believe in persistence. Dust settles on the bowl. The baby sneezes into breakfast. The mother looks at the mess, pauses, and continues. There are days when standards become flexible enough to do yoga. Food scarcity shadows every mile. Early in the journey, the wagon may groan under abundance. Later, flour barrels sink lower, bacon grows rancid in heat or runs short, coffee weakens, sugar disappears except for special moments. A baby's growth does not pause politely because the sacks are lighter. The mother watches the child's arms, cheeks, belly, mood. Is the baby gaining, losing? Does the child have strength to sit, crawl, reach, complain? A good loud complaint can be reassuring. A quiet baby may frighten her more than a cranky one. Specialists in frontier family life continue to explore whether mothers ration differently for infants and young children than diaries openly reveal. Many written accounts list supplies and shortages, but not always the private decisions made over a pot. Did a mother save the softest bread for the baby? Did she give her own share of milk to a child? Did older siblings resent it? Did fathers notice every small transfer of food from adult hunger to infant need? The record often leaves these exchanges in the shadows, though the body of a growing baby depended on them. At noon, the train pauses where grass is thin and shade thinner. The mother sits on an overturned bucket, baby in her lap, and prepares another small meal, perhaps mashed beans, pressed through cloth or crushed with the back of a spoon. Perhaps broth thickened with flour, perhaps a bit of dried apple stewed soft if fuel and water allow. The smell is faintly sweet, smoky, and dusty. The baby grabs the spoon with stunning betrayal, smears food across one cheek, and looks victorious. You cannot blame the child. There are few victories available under 18 months. Hunger affects mood. Adults grow short-tempered when rations shrink, and babies absorb the tension even if their own bellies are full. A crying infant at supper can feel unbearable to people who have walked 15 miles on little more than coffee and fried dough. The mother senses when impatience rises around her. She turns away, rocks, feeds, distracts. She protects not only the baby's body but the baby's place within the weary camp. A child too loud, too needy, too constantly sick can draw pity, but also irritation. The mother knows this and carries it quietly. Then there are treats, a lick of molasses from a spoon, a soft bit of biscuit, a taste of dried fruit syrup. These are not daily luxuries, but when they happen, the baby's face changes as if discovering that the universe has hidden kindness in a pot. Older children gather instantly, because children can detect sweetness through canvas, weather, and moral instruction. The mother has to divide the moment carefully. One bit for you, one for the baby. No, not more. Yes, I saw you try. Food safety remains fragile. Meat can spoil. Water can sicken. Unwashed hands move from animals to cooking to babies. Yet women do what they can. They boil when possible. They cover bowls. They choose fresher water when they can find it. They trust smell, sight, memory, and the advice of others. Sometimes that is enough. Sometimes it's not. The trail teaches humility through the stomach. By evening, supper smoke lies low over the camp. Beans bubble slowly, almost spitefully. Cornbread or cakes fry in grease. Coffee scents the air, bitter and comforting. The baby sits propped near the mother's skirt, chewing on a crust too hard to swallow quickly and therefore excellent entertainment. The child's hands are sticky, the face is striped with dust and food. The mother wipes, feeds, wipes again, then gives up for a moment and lets the baby be gloriously untidy. This, too, is care. Not perfect cleanliness, not balanced nutrition measured in charts. Care is keeping the child fed enough, hydrated enough, warm enough, and loved enough to greet another morning. Care is saving the softest bite, cooling the spoon with tired breath, guarding the cup, choosing the baby's need over your own last swallow of milk. Care is mush at dawn, beans at dusk, and a mother's hand cupped beneath a small chin while the wagons rest under a darkening sky. The child grows by such spoonfuls, not dramatically, not in a way the trail notices. A little more strength in the grip, a steadier head, a louder laugh when a sibling makes a face. The mother sees it. She carries the evidence inside her like warmth. The food is plain, often scarce, sometimes gritty, sometimes smoky, but it becomes flesh, breath, and stubborn life. As the fires lower and bowls are scraped clean, the baby leans heavy against her, full for tonight. And the road beyond camp fades into darkness once again. The road beyond camp fades into darkness, and in the morning it returns as a long pale ribbon where play must fit between chores, hunger, weather, and the endless business of keeping small bodies alive. The baby wakes with food dried at the corner of the mouth and one hand tangled in the blanket. A sibling leans close, makes a ridiculous face, and is rewarded with a gummy smile. For 1 second. The wagon is not a freight box of flour, fear, and laundry. It is a stage, and the baby is a very demanding audience. You walk beside the family as the day begins, noticing how little childhood requires to become play. A strip of cloth becomes a fluttering bird, a spoon becomes a drumstick, a pebble becomes treasure until someone sensibly removes it from the baby's fist before it becomes breakfast. Buttons, spools, corncobs, feathers, smooth sticks, bits of leather, and scraps of bright fabric all pass through the baby's world. Toys are not chosen from shelves. They are rescued from usefulness, borrowed briefly from adult life, then reclaimed before they are lost under the wagon. A familiar fact from social history is that 19th century children, especially in rural and migrating families, were expected to learn through participation in household labour much earlier than many modern children. Play and work overlapped. A child might amuse a baby while also guarding a kettle, watching a younger sibling, or gathering fuel. A mother could turn tasks into little lessons because she had no separate classroom, nursery, and playroom. The frontier curriculum was very hands-on, occasionally muddy, and rarely approved by anyone with clean cuffs. The baby's first lessons are sensory, the rough grain of the wagon side under little fingers, the warmth of a tin cup held in both hands, the smell of smoke in the blanket, the sound of ox bells and wheels, the taste of dust. Because apparently every infant on Earth is determined to test the mineral content of the local environment. The mother gently removes the child's hand from the ground, wipes the palm, and turns the attention towards something safer. A bit of ribbon, a wooden spoon, her own finger, seized with surprising power. Older siblings become entertainers, teachers, and occasional threats to order. A sister sings the song the mother uses at night, but louder and faster, because subtlety has not yet been issued. A brother rolls a corncob across the wagon floor and calls it a horse. The baby squeals when it bumps against a blanket. Another child stacks small chips of wood and knocks them over for the baby's delight. The mother glances over with tired gratitude. 10 minutes of baby laughter can feel like a gift from the governor. If the governor were useful for once. There is a charming little oddity in the world of homemade frontier toys. Corncob dolls were common in many rural households, sometimes dressed in scraps of cloth, sometimes left plain, and sometimes loved with an intensity that no porcelain doll could guarantee. For a wagon baby, even the idea of a doll may begin as texture and shape rather than pretend. The cob is rough, the cloth is soft, the face, if there is one, is a few marks or stitches. The baby gums the edge, and an older sister protests because that is apparently her child. Thank you very much. Tiny lessons happen constantly. The mother taps the baby's hand and says no when fingers reach for the fire. She names things as she works: cup, spoon, blanket, ox, papa, sister, hot, hush, wait. The vocabulary of the trail is practical and intimate. Some words are warnings, some are comforts, some are promises. The baby does not understand the full journey, but language settles in like dust, coating daily life until it becomes part of the child. At a midday halt, the baby is placed on a blanket under the wagon shade. The ground is uneven, but the shade is good enough. A sibling sits nearby, tasked with watching. The child drags a stick through dirt, making lines, then circles, then a map of no known territory. The baby watches the moving stick with deep concentration. Perhaps that is the beginning of drawing. Perhaps it is just the beginning of trying to grab the stick and hit someone with it. Development is mysterious. Educators and historians still discuss how much formal schooling children lost during long migrations. But for infants and toddlers, the sharper issue is how learning continued through imitation, speech, song, and small responsibilities in motion. The trail delayed school books for many older children, yet it taught other skills with relentless efficiency. How to listen for danger, how to fetch without spilling too much, how to quiet a baby, how to share when supplies are thin, how to notice weather before adults say the word, how to keep walking when bored. Which is a skill many modern people still lack. No judgment. Perhaps a little judgment. Songs are lessons too. The mother's lullabies carry rhythm and language. A counting rhyme may count fingers or toes. A hymn tune gives shape to evening. A nonsense song makes the baby laugh and the older children roll their eyes. Then secretly learn every word. In a world where books are few and too precious to let babies chew, voice becomes the first library. The baby hears stories of home before memory can hold them. Orchard, church, grandmother, snow, garden gate. These words float above the trail like scraps of another life. Sometimes the play is simply watching. The baby rides in the wagon, propped safely among bundles, and sees the canvas glow, shadows move, a mother's hand reach in and out, dust motes turning in light. Outside, the prairie unfolds in colours too large for language. Gold grass, blue distance, white ox backs, red cloth on a sibling's sleeve, a bird lifting suddenly from the ground. The child's eyes follow motion, learning the world in fragments. Play also keeps fear away. at least for a while, after storms, river crossings, illness, or tense encounters. Adults may lower their voices, but children return to games with astonishing nerve. They chase, sing, collect, invent, laugh too loudly. A baby laughs with them. The mother may feel irritation at the noise, then relief. Laughter means breath. Laughter means the family has not been entirely swallowed by worry. A child who can be distracted by a button is still here, still reaching. By late afternoon, the baby is tired, overstimulated by sunlight, rattling wheels, siblings, songs, and the suspicious corncob doll. The fun collapses into fussing, as it always does. The mother recognizes the turn. She takes away the spoon before it becomes a weapon, gathers the child close, and lets the older children grumble back to chores. The baby struggles, offended by rest. The mother hums anyway. Learning to sleep is also a lesson, perhaps the hardest one, especially when there are oxen to supervise and dirt to taste. Evening brings one last round of play near the fire. A father carves a tiny shape from soft wood. Maybe a horse, maybe a dog, maybe an animal known only to him and his knife. The baby grabs it, waves it, drops it, demands it again without words. The family laughs. The mother warns that it must not go in the fire. A sibling says the baby gets everything. The mother says the baby gets nothing but trouble. The baby beams, having understood none of this and approved all of it. As darkness settles, the toys are gathered, if anyone can find them. The corncob doll is tucked into a blanket. The spoon returns to duty. The pebble is thrown away from camp with firm moral purpose. The baby rests against the mother, heavy with food, play, and the day's little lessons. The wagon creaks in the cooling air. The child has learned no letters, written no sums, recited no formal lesson, yet the road has taught touch, sound, faces, rhythms, warnings, tenderness, and the shape of belonging. The mother looks down as the baby's hand opens in sleep, releasing a thread of red cloth. She saves it. Because even scraps matter. Tomorrow it may flutter again, becoming bird, banner, toy, or lesson. For tonight, it lies beside the sleeping child, a small bright thing in a wagon full of shadow. The small red thread rests beside the sleeping child, bright against the shadowed blanket, and for a while the camp seems tender enough to protect every breathing thing within it. Firelight softens the wagon wheels. The oxen chew slowly in the dark. Children turn in their bedding. A mother listens to the baby's breath and lets herself drift towards sleep, though never very far, on the trail. Sleep is not a door closing. It is more like sitting near a door with one hand still on the latch. Beyond the firelight, the road carries older sorrows. You pass them in the daytime as low mounds near the trail, sometimes marked with stones, sometimes with a wooden board, sometimes with nothing at all once wind and animals have done their work. The wagon train may fall quiet when it passes such places, or it may not. People cannot bow their heads at every grief and still reach the mountains before snow. That sounds hard, because it is. The trail teaches endurance partly by refusing to pause long enough for the heart to catch up. A sober truth from the overland record is that infant and child deaths did occur along emigrant routes, caused by disease, accidents, exposure, poor nutrition, and the limits of 19th century medicine. Cholera and other illnesses could move swiftly through companies. Babies were especially fragile. Families sometimes buried loved ones near the trail and then had to continue the same day or soon after. The phrase moving on can sound brave in later stories. In the moment, it may feel almost unbearable. You stay close to the mother as she notices another woman in camp holding a baby too still. The morning light is grey, voices lower without instruction. Someone goes for water, someone else brings cloth. The mother pulls her own child nearer, not because it helps the other mother, but because fear has hands. It reaches for what remains. Her baby protests being squeezed, and the sound is sharp. Alive, blessedly ordinary, no one explains much to the smaller children. They understand enough from faces. Older children may be told to keep away, to gather wood, to watch the animals, to take the baby for a moment, to be useful in the old, terrible adult way of turning grief into tasks. A woman kneels beside the bereaved mother, another begins preparing a small wrapping. Men stand apart, hats in hand, awkward with helplessness. The camp smoke rises straight up, as if even the air is trying not to disturb anything. There is an odd and heartbreaking custom sometimes mentioned in accounts, and family memory graves on the trail might be hidden or disguised, even driven over by wagons, to protect them from animals or disturbance. Imagine that. A mother leaves a child behind and then watches wheels pass over the place, not from disrespect, but from desperate protection. The road becomes both witness and cover. It is one of those details history hands you quietly, and you do not quite know where to put it. Mourning customs travel too, but they must shrink to fit the wagon. Back home, there might have been neighbours, a church bell, a family plot, black clothing kept for funerals, time to sit in rooms where everyone knows why the curtains are drawn. Here, grief is wrapped in a blanket, spoken over by a few voices, and left under a sky too large for comfort. A hymn may be sung softly, a prayer may be said, someone may place a toy, a flower, a scrap of cloth, someone may not, because supplies are few and shock makes hands uncertain. The mother with the living baby watches and feels a guilt she would never say aloud. Relief can feel cruel when another woman's arms are empty. She looks down at her child, at the warm cheek, the damp lashes, the little mouth opening in sleep. She remembers last night's fever, the river crossing, the storm, the moments when the breath seemed too quiet. The baby is here. That is everything. That is also not enough to save anyone else. Current scholarship often asks whether the famous image of the endlessly strong pioneer mother hides the emotional cost of migration. Diaries sometimes present restraint, faith, or plain reporting where modern readers expect open anguish. But restraint is not absence. A woman might write, "Lost our dear babe this morning," and then record miles travelled in the same entry. That does not mean the loss was small. It means the road required the sentence to stand up, shoulder its bundle, and walk. You can feel the emotional discipline in the camp. Breakfast still happens, though some cannot eat. Animals still need yoking, wet cloth still needs drying, a baby still needs nursing. The bereaved mother may be urged to drink something warm. Another woman takes her hand. No one says the right thing, because there is no right thing. There are only small mercies, a cup held, a shawl placed around shoulders, a task quietly done by someone else. For the mother you follow, fear becomes more watchful. She checks her baby too often that day, then tells herself there is no such thing as too often. She touches the neck, the hands, the chest. She studies every cough. A nap that would have seemed peaceful yesterday now seems suspicious. She leans close until she feels warm breath against her cheek. The baby wakes and cries, annoyed at the inspection. She almost laughs. The child is offended by survival management. Excellent. Resilience is not a shining heroic pose. It is changing a diaper after a funeral. It is singing with a cracked voice. It is accepting broth from a neighbour. It is walking beside the wagon because the animals must keep moving and the season will not soften. Just because grief has entered the company, it's also anger, numbness, envy, prayer, and the strange blankness that comes when the mind cannot carry more. At midday, the wagons pass into open country. The mother walks with her baby tied close, one hand resting over the small back. The child sleeps, unaware of the sorrow moving through the adults like a cold current. A sibling asks why the other baby is not coming. The mother answers carefully, choosing words simple enough for a child and gentle enough for herself. Gone to God. Perhaps. Gone to heaven. Sleeping where we left him. Different families would speak differently, shaped by belief and pain. The sibling accepts or does not. Children return to questions when adults least expect it. The company moves more quietly that afternoon. Even the usual complaints seem muted. The road gives no sign that it understands. Grass bends in the wind. A hawk circles. Dust rises behind the wheels and settles again. The mother keeps hearing, in memory, the voice of the woman who cried before dawn. She may carry that sound for the rest of the journey, and perhaps for the rest of her life. Toward evening, camp forms near a shallow draw, fires are lit, supper begins. The baby in her arms wakes hungry, rooting with fierce insistence. She nurses the child while staring into the coals. Milk lets down, the baby swallows. Life continues in the most intimate, stubborn way possible. She may feel sorrow and gratitude braided so tightly that she cannot separate them. She may whisper a promise into the child's hair, not a grand one, just the promise mothers make again and again without ceremony. I will try. Night comes slowly. The breathed wagon is quiet. Other women move near it without crowding. Your mother lays her baby down, then lifts the child again, unable to resist holding a little longer. The warmth against her chest becomes a kind of answer. Not to death, because death is not answered so easily, but to the demand that care continue. The red thread from yesterday is still tucked near the bedding. She finds it, rolls it between finger and thumb, and places it beside the baby once more. A small, bright thing, a sign that play, memory, and tenderness have not vanished. Outside, the trail lies dark under stars. Behind them rests a grief they cannot carry in the wagon, yet somehow do. Ahead waits another morning. The mother closes her eyes. Not peacefully exactly, but with the baby breathing close enough to guide her through the night. The baby breathes close enough to guide her through the night. And by morning the land has changed its mind again. The open country begins to lift. The trail, once broad and dusty, narrows into rougher tracks that climb through broken ground. Hills gather ahead, then ridges, then the darker suggestion of mountains. The wagons no longer roll with even complaint. They strain, jolt, and pause, as if each wheel has discovered a personal objection to elevation. You walk beside the mother as she studies the road with the weary suspicion of someone who has learned that beauty usually charges a fee. The air is clearer here, thinner and sharper in the lungs. Pines appear in dark clumps. Stones press through the trail. Mud waits in shaded places, slick and patient. The baby is tied close against her body, not riding loose inside the wagon now, because every lurch feels less predictable. The child's cheek rests against her shoulder, warm beneath the morning chill. A firm part of the emigrant story is that mountain crossings often forced families to lighten wagons. Double-team animals, lower wagons with ropes, unload goods, or abandon possessions to keep moving. The journey west was not one smooth line across prairie grass. It became a series of physical tests, especially in places like the Rockies, the Sierra Nevada, or difficult passes along the routes to Oregon and California. For mothers with babies, every steep grade turned packing choices into moral choices. What do you keep? What can you lose? What object weighs more than memory? The mother watches as men remove boxes and sacks from wagons before a hard climb. The ground becomes a litter of household ambition. A cracked chair, a trunk too heavy, spare dishes, books, a stove piece that seemed sensible in town and now looks like iron sarcasm. Someone mutters over a chest of linens. Someone else argues that the family will need those tools when they arrive. Arrive where? Exactly, at the end of their patience at a valley not yet seen, the mountains do not answer. Baby things are considered differently. A blanket stays. Cloths stay if possible. The medicine packet stays. A tiny garment may be tucked into a pocket. The mother may give up something of her own to keep something for the child. A shawl, a second dress, a keepsake that once felt essential. She may not speak of the trade. The wagon simply becomes lighter by one piece of her past, while the baby remains pressed to her chest, breathing into the future. There is a strange little detail often noticed along difficult trail sections. Abandoned goods could mark the route like a scattered museum of regret. Travellers passed furniture, books, tools, feather beds, barrels, and family items left behind by those ahead. Children sometimes search these cast-offs with curiosity, and adults with a mixture of pity and practical interest. A baby might be warmed in a blanket that came from another family's lost dream, picked up because need had no interest in sentiment. The road recycled sorrow quite efficiently, very rude, very useful. The climb begins, oxen lean into the yoke, muscles shifting under hide, men push at wheels, boots slipping, women walk because the wagon must be spared weight. The mother walks too, baby bound close, arms curved protectively around the little body. Each step asks more of her thighs, back, and breath. The trail is rutted, rocky, and damp where meltwater crosses it. Her shoes slide. Her skirts catch on brush. The baby, offended by the bouncing, begins to fuss. She pauses where she can, shifting the child higher. The baby's head wobbles against her collarbone. She checks the wrap, then the cap, then the tiny hands tucked inside cloth. Cold wind moves down the slope. It smells of pine resin, wet stone, animal sweat, and wood smoke from wagons ahead. The baby's cry thins in the wind. The mother bends her head and hums, not to make the mountain kinder, only to remind the child that one familiar sound still exists. Those who study women's migration narratives continue to weigh how much physical labour by mothers in mountain terrain has been understated. Since many accounts mention difficult roads and abandoned goods without lingering on the bodies carrying infants beside them, the record may tell us a wagon was lightened, or that women walked, or that the ascent was severe. It may not say that a mother's milk leaked through her dress while she pushed a wheel, or that she climbed with a baby on one hip and fear in her throat. Absence in the diary does not mean absence on the slope. Mud deepens in a shaded stretch. Wheels sink. Men shout for blocks, ropes, more hands. The wagon tilts. The mother steps back, holding the baby tight. A sibling slips and falls to one knee, then rises with mud spread across the leg like dark paint. No one laughs, not yet, later. Perhaps. This will become a family story. At the moment, it is simply another small alarm. The mother may hand the baby to an older child while she helps unload, or she may refuse to let go. Both choices carry risk, if she keeps the baby. She's less free to work and more likely to stumble. If she hands the child away, her eyes remain fixed on that child anyway, which means her hands work without her full attention. The trail offers no perfect arrangement, only a rotating selection of inadequate ones. At the crest of a rise, the company stops to breathe. Below, the wagons look small and stubborn against the slope. Above, the pass waits like a narrow gate. The baby is quieted, perhaps stunned by cold air and the hard rhythm of the climb. The mother loosens the wrap slightly to check for sweat, because a baby can overheat even in cold if bound too warmly. Then she covers the child again before the wind steals the warmth. This constant adjustment has become almost unconscious. Heat, cold, wet, hunger, fear, all answered by fingers moving through cloth. Food changes in the mountains too. Fires may be harder to start in wet places. Water may be cold and clear, though still not automatically safe. Animals need grass that may be sparse. People eat quickly, tiredly, A baby gets breast milk if milk comes, mush if mush can be made, softened bread if there is bread. The mother may chew a bit first, as before, then offer it, remembering the messy meals of easier ground with something almost like nostalgia. Imagine missing prairie dust because mountain mud has become your new enemy. History is generous like that. The descent can be worse than the climb. Wagons are roped and eased down slopes. Wheels may be locked or dragged. People walk ahead, beside, behind. Everywhere danger seems likely to invent itself. The mother keeps the baby close and stays clear of the wheels. She hears the scrape of locked tires, the groan of ropes, the creak of overloaded wood. A man calls for everyone to move aside. The baby startles. The mother turns away from the sound, shielding the face with her shoulder. Here, her strength is not dramatic. It is endurance measured in inches. Adjust the wrap, step over stone, hold the baby, watch the wheel, pull a child back, lift the skirt from mud. Do not fall. Do not cry where the older children can see. Unless crying is the only way to keep from breaking, then cry and keep walking anyway. The mountains do not reward dignity, they reward continuation. By evening, the wagons reach a flatter place among trees. The camp forms slowly, everyone too tired for much talk. Smoke rises blue through pine branches. The baby is peeled gently from the mother's body, warm and limp with sleep. Her back aches where the child's weight rested all day. Her arms tremble when she reaches for the kettle. Someone has found enough wood. Someone else is spreading wet blankets. A child presents a pine cone to the baby, who accepts it with grave confusion and immediate plans to taste it. The mother intercepts. Not everything in nature is a snack, beloved. She sits near the fire and removes one shoe. Her stocking is damp. A blister is opened at the heel. She looks at it without surprise. The baby wakes and fusses. She puts the shoe back on. Because the child needs her before the foot does. This is not sainthood, it is triage. The body is a committee, and the baby has a very loud vote. Night settles cold among the trees. The mountains stand around the camp like sleeping giants. The mother wraps the baby carefully and draws the blanket close. Around them lie the possessions that survived the climb. Fewer than before, somewhere behind, along the hard ascent. Rests a chair, perhaps a trunk, perhaps the small physical evidence of who they used to be. A head. The road continues through dark timber and stone. The baby sleeps, unaware that the family has become lighter. The mother knows. She feels every absence, yet her arms are full. She has carried the child through mud, wind, and the mountain's long refusal. Tomorrow will ask for more strength, naturally, because the trail has no manners, but tonight, beneath pine smoke and cold stars, she listens to the baby breathe and lets that small sound outweigh everything left behind. The small sound outweighs everything left behind, and the wagons move on with that strange lightness that follows loss by necessity. Fewer boxes, fewer dishes, fewer pieces of the old home clattering behind the oxen, yet the baby still needs the same impossible amount of attention, which is history's way of reminding everyone that the future may be smaller than imagined, but never less demanding. The mountains begin to loosen. The trail drops toward valleys where grass returns in thicker patches and streams move with a gentler voice. The air softens, trees open. You see wider sky again, and after weeks or months of walking, nursing, washing, shivering, sweating, and coaxing life along the road, the word arrival begins to stir inside the company. Not loudly. People have learned not to trust distant hope too quickly, but it is there, flickering like a fire seen through trees. The mother senses it in the way people speak. Land, claim, cabin, settlement, mill, store, church, neighbours. Words that belong to fixed places. The baby rides on her hip, stronger now than at the beginning. Or perhaps this is the newer baby, blinking at a world that has already carried it across rivers and through cold nights. Either way, the child knows the wagon, the mother's body, the taste of smoke, the roll of wheels, the soft panic before a storm, a settled house, when it comes, may feel like the strange thing. A clear historical reality waits at the end of many overland journeys. Arrival rarely meant comfort right away. Families reaching Oregon, California, Utah, or other Western destinations still had to find shelter, establish claims or work, build cabins, plant crops, obtain supplies, and survive the first seasons in a new place. The wagon journey ended, but domestic labour did not. For a mother with babies, the frontier simply changed shape. Canvas became wall logs, if fortune allowed. The cradle still had to be made. When the family reaches a settlement or claim, you might expect a grand exhale. Sometimes there is one, a town, even a rough one. Smells different from the trail sawdust, cooking, animals in pens, damp earth near wells, wood smoke rising from real chimneys. The mother hears a hammer somewhere. A dog barks from behind a fence. A woman she does not know stands in a doorway and looks at the wagon with an expression that might be welcome, pity, curiosity, or all three. After so much empty distance, the sight of another woman near a fixed doorway can feel almost luxurious, but then the unpacking begins, and romance takes a seat on an overturned crate. The wagon must be emptied, bedding aired, food inspected, tools found, baby cloth separated from the general disaster. The mother has to decide where the child will sleep tonight, if there is a cabin already available. It may be drafty, smoky, crowded, and unfinished, if there is no cabin. The family may live in the wagon, a tent, a dugout, a borrowed room, or a rough shelter while building begins. Arrival, apparently, is not the same as having shelves. Deeply inconsiderate. One curious domestic habit that often followed migration was the continued use of wagon routines even after families stopped travelling. A chest might remain packed in the same order. Baby cloths might still be stored in bundles tied for quick reaching. Cooking might stay outdoors or near a temporary fire until a hearth is built. The mother may keep listening for wagon sounds at night, the way people today reach for a phone that is not there. The road has trained her hands and ears, and training does not vanish at the property line. The baby explores the new place by touch. Rough cabin floor, grass near a doorway, a wooden threshold, a quilt spread in a corner. The mother watches constantly because a settled place has fresh dangers, splinters, hearth sparks, open wells, tools, livestock too close, snakes in grass, unfamiliar plants. The wagon was cramped, but its dangers were known. A claim is larger, which means the baby can find trouble with improved efficiency, progress, in a sense, if there are neighbours. Women begin rebuilding the social net, a borrowed kettle, a shared meal, advice about local water, news of a midwife, information about where fever has been bad, where berries grow, where a cow might be bought, where cloth can be traded. On the trail, women gathered at creeks and fires. Here, they gather at doorways, wash places, and cabins. The geography changes. The need does not. Students of settlement history continue to examine whether women experienced arrival as relief, disappointment, or another stage of hardship disguised as success. The answer shifts by family, place, season, class, health, and luck. A woman who reaches a thriving settlement with relatives nearby may feel rescued. Another who reaches an isolated claim before winter may wonder whether the wagon road was merely the preface to a lonelier book. Many likely felt both gratitude for stopping, grief for what was left behind, and dread of the work waiting in the soil. The mother sets the baby down on a blanket while others unload. The child pats the fabric, then crawls or wriggles toward a beam of sunlight. Dust rises in the cabin, different from trail dust, but still dust, because apparently dust has claimed permanent citizenship. The mother laughs softly and pulls the baby back. She wipes the small hands, then sees they are dirty again almost immediately. So the old lesson continues: cleanliness is not a state, it is a brief event. Food routines shift slowly. Fresh milk may become more possible if a cow survives or can be obtained. A garden may come, but not today. Today there is still flour, beans, bacon if any remains, dried fruit if fortune has been kind, and perhaps food purchased or shared. The baby receives softened bread, milk if available, broth, mush, or whatever the household can manage after months on the trail. A bowl eaten beside a fixed wall may seem almost ceremonial. The baby, loyal to chaos, smears it anyway. A cradle may be built from scrap boards, or a box may serve, or the wagon bed may remain the baby's sleeping place until the family has time and wood. The mother folds the blanket with the same care she used on the road. She places clean cloths nearby. She checks drafts. She listens to the cabin sounds. Not wheels now, not chains. Instead, the pop of a hearth, wind in cracks, a roof settling. An animal outside, perhaps rain on shingles or sod. New sounds for a baby to learn. At dusk, the family stands near the half-emptied wagon. It looks smaller now, almost shy without its full load. For months it was nursery, pantry, shelter, and witness. Now it becomes an object again, though not an ordinary one. Its boards hold scratches from pots, stains from milk, the memory of a birth, the smell of river crossings. The place where a baby slept through storms and woke everyone during calm weather just to keep morale honest. The mother touches the wagon side. Maybe she means to steady herself. Maybe she's saying farewell to a version of life that was unbearable and beloved by turns. The baby leans from her arm and slaps the wood with one soft hand. A blessing, perhaps, or just a baby testing sound. The wagon answers with a hollow thump. Night settles over the new place. There is no long line of wagons beyond the fire, no captain calling the morning order, no immediate need to yoke animals before sunrise. Yet the mother does not fully relax. She has lived too long with interruption. She lays the baby down in the corner or box or wagon bed, whatever tonight permits, and sits nearby as the child drifts. The room smells of fresh-cut wood, smoke, damp earth, old blankets, and the last trace of the trail still clinging to everything they own. Arrival has not ended the story. It has only changed the walls around it. The mother still feeds, wipes, warms, watches, and hums. The baby still reaches, cries, learns, and sleeps outside. The dark land waits to become a farm, a street, a memory, a disputed inheritance, a home inside, under a roof that may not yet keep out all the wind. The child breathes steadily. The mother listens. And for the first time in many nights, the road is not moving beneath them. The road is not moving beneath them, and that stillness feels almost suspicious. The mother wakes once in the night anyway, hand reaching for the baby before her eyes open. The child is there, warm and real, breathing in the corner of the cabin or the wagon bed or the rough box that has become a cradle for now. Outside, no line of wagons groans awake, no ox chain clinks, no captain calls. Yet her body remembers the trail so strongly that silence itself becomes a strange new sound. Morning spreads through the cracks in the wall. The baby stirs somewhere nearby. A rooster attempts authority. The mother rises and begins again. Because settlement does not cancel motherhood. It only gives the tasks a different floor. But as the days lengthen into weeks, and weeks into the beginning of a new life, the journey starts to change inside memory. The dust softens. The fear becomes story. The exhaustion becomes proof. The wagon, which smelled of sour cloth and damp wool while you were inside it, may one day be described as brave, quaint, even dear. Memory is a talented decorator. You sit beside her years later in imagination, perhaps at a table worn smooth by work, while the child who once rode through storms now runs outside or helps with chores. The mother may write a letter east, if paper, ink, and energy can be spared. She may describe the new place, the weather, the crops, the neighbours, the baby's growth. She may mention the trail lightly, as if it were a difficult road and not an entire world of hunger. Milk, sickness, river fear, and laundry snapping like tiny flags of surrender. One important fact about our knowledge of pioneer mothers is that much of what survives comes from diaries, letters, reminiscences, guidebooks, family papers, and later oral histories, many written or preserved by literate emigrants. These sources are precious, but uneven. They often favour families who had time, schooling, paper, and descendants who kept the documents. Countless mothers left no written account at all. Their labour survives in indirect traces, in births recorded, children raised, graves passed, recipes remembered, and stories told beside stoves long after the wagon stopped. The mother may have kept a diary on the trail if she did. It was probably not a flowing confession written by candlelight with perfect spelling and emotional clarity. It might have been brief, practical, and tired. Weather fair, travelled 12 miles, baby fretful, washed, crossed creek, Mrs. Carter ill, flour low. Such entries look small on paper. You have now walked beside the meaning underneath them. Baby fretful might mean hours of crying beneath hot canvas. Washed might mean kneeling at cold water with cracked hands and dirty cloths. Flour low might mean the mother quietly saving the softest bite for a child. A curious little detail from the old family preservation is that locks of baby hair, scraps of cloth, pressed flowers, or tiny shoes were sometimes kept as memory objects, especially when a child survived a dangerous season or when a family wanted to hold close a lost one. A baby shoe from the trail, if saved, could become almost sacred in a drawer. Imagine such a shoe decades later, stiff and faded, held by someone who says, "You wore this when we crossed. The child may not remember, but the object does, or rather, the family asks it to." Memory also edits. A mother might leave out the smell, she might leave out the anger, she might not write that she resented the crying baby one night, then hated herself for it. She might not admit how afraid she was of native families she later knew she had misunderstood. She might not describe the body after birth, or the fear when milk would not come, or the envy she felt seeing another woman with better supplies, respectability, faith, pride, and the desire not to worry relatives all shaped what she put on the page. Many scholars ask whether the pioneer mother became a myth, partly because later generations needed her to stand for courage, purity, sacrifice, and national destiny, rather than for complicated human experience. The gentle mother in a sunbonnet, holding her baby beside a clean wagon at sunset, is easier to admire than the real woman swatting flies away from mush, arguing over water, mourning a neighbour's child, and wondering if the whole journey was a mistake. The myth is not entirely false, it is just too tidy, and history, as you know by now, has been wearing dirty cuffs the entire time. Family stories grow around the children, the baby who nearly drowned at the river, though perhaps the water only reached the wagon floor, the baby born during a thunderstorm, though maybe the thunder came later, the child who never cried, which every mother in the room knows is a suspicious claim, the toddler who slept through a mountain descent, the infant who smiled at native woman, the little one who survived fever when everyone feared the worst. These stories are told and polished until they shine, the hard edges remain underneath, but fingers touch the smooth surface. Letters sent back east sometimes served another purpose. They reassured those who had stayed behind. A mother might soften the hardships because she did not want her own mother to worry, or she might emphasize endurance to prove the family's choice was worth its cost. No one wants to write. We gave up comfort and crossed half a continent so I could wash diapers in mud and sleep beside a leaking wall, even if that is, in certain weeks, a fair summary. The baby grows among these stories without remembering the road. That is one of the tender oddities of infancy. The journey may shape the entire family, but the child who caused so much labour carries no clear memory of the mother's midnight hum, the river crossing, the fever cloth, the red thread, the wagon sling, the corncob doll. The mother remembers for both of them. Her body remembers the weight on her hip. Her hands remember folding cloth in moving shade. Her ears remember the difference between a hungry cry and a dangerous quiet. In old age, if she reaches it, she may tell the story differently each time, not because she lies, but because memory walks in circles. Some evenings she may speak of the kindness of women on the train, the cup of coffee passed before dawn, the stranger who held the baby while she washed. Another evening she may speak of graves, another of a mountain climb, and how she left behind a chair but kept the baby blanket, another of arriving, and how the child cried the first night because the cabin was too still. Everyone laughs at that. A baby missing wagon noise, ridiculous, completely believable. You notice also what is absent from many remembered stories. Indigenous mothers become brief figures, if mentioned at all, though their knowledge and presence shaped the landscape through which emigrants moved. Enslaved or formerly enslaved women, free black families, Mexican families, and other travellers appear less often in the popular picture than they did in the broader Western world. Poor women who could not write may vanish almost entirely. The classic pioneer mother is one face among many, enlarged by memory until she hides others behind her bonnet, so you listen carefully, not only to what is said, but to the soft spaces between sentences, the diary line, the saved shoe, the repeated family joke, the grave with no name, the baby who survived and grew into someone who perhaps never knew how often a mother bent over them in the dark to count breaths. Social history lives there, in the small repeated acts that rarely receive statues. Feeding, washing, warming, naming, holding, continuing. Evening returns to the cabin, and the mother takes out the old trail blanket. It is thinner now, patched at one corner, smelling of cedar from a chest rather than smoke from a campfire. The child, no longer tiny, may not care. Children are not always reverent toward artifacts of parental suffering. The mother smooths it anyway. Under her palm, the cloth holds weather, river mist, dust, illness, women's voices, mountain cold, and the first small sleep of a baby inside a wagon. The story is not fixed. It moves each time it is remembered. Just as the wagon moved, creaking, shifting, carrying more than it seemed able to hold, and as night deepens around the settled home, you understand that the mother's greatest record may not be the diary at all. It may be the living child nearby, breathing in a place made possible by all those unrecorded mornings, all those wet cloths, all those songs sung under canvas when nobody had the strength to write them down. The living child breathes in a place made possible by unrecorded mornings, and the old trail blanket lies folded like a quiet witness, still. Before the story fades completely into settlement, you find yourself back beside the wagon one last time, in that floating hour between supper and sleep. Not the first camp, not the last exactly, but a camp made from all the camps at once. The canvas is dim. The wheels are still warm from the day. Smoke drifts low, carrying the smell of beans, damp wool, milk, and pine ash. The baby rests against the mother's shoulder, heavier now than at the beginning, as if each mile has added a little weight to that small body. You know the rhythm by now. Feed, wipe, wrap, listen. Shift the blanket, check the wind, touch the forehead, count the breaths without admitting you are counting. The mother moves through these gestures as naturally as breathing, though nothing about them was ever easy. She has made a nursery from motion, a home from cloth and habit, a cradle from arms that could not afford to tire. Around her, the wagon train settles into the same old sounds, low voices, animal huffs, a kettle cooling, a child asking one final unnecessary question because bedtime has always inspired legal arguments. A reliable closing truth is that westward migration depended not only on trails, livestock, guides, and wagons, but on domestic labour repeated every day by women and children. Babies survived when they did because someone fed them, cleaned them, shaded them, warmed them, soothed them, and watched them through weather, sickness, hunger, and fear. The famous movement across the frontier was also 1,000 private acts of care performed under canvas, beside rivers, in mud, in heat, and in the dark. Grand history rode beside laundry. It always has. Though grand history rarely sends a thank you note, the mother sits with the baby near the wagon opening. Firelight touches the child's cheek. The tiny hand opens and closes against her dress, catching the cloth, releasing it, catching again. Perhaps the red thread is still tucked somewhere in the bedding. Perhaps the corncob doll has vanished beneath a sack. Perhaps the little wooden animal carved by the father has lost one leg and gained sentimental value, which is the usual career path of beloved toys. Here is one last unusual detail. Small enough to fit in your palms, some children who crossed as infants later grew up with no memory of the journey. Yet families still called them trail babies, marking their identity by a passage they could not remember. Their mothers remembered it for them. The child might hear. You were nursed through a storm, or you slept in the wagon box, or you nearly frightened us to death at the river. The baby becomes a keeper of family legend without ever having agreed to the job. Very typical of babies, honestly. The mother looks across camp. She sees other women bending over bedrolls, shaking blankets, lifting children, banking fires. Some faces she knows well now, because the trail has made them witnesses to one another's private endurance. Some will settle near her, some will turn toward other valleys. Some she may never see again after the company breaks apart, yet their voices will remain in memory. Advice at the creek, laughter over burnt bread, a prayer beside fever, a warning before a storm, the brisk offer of a clean cloth when there was no need to explain why it mattered. The road has asked more of her than she imagined. It asked for strength in the ordinary forms: walking while sore, cooking while hungry, soothing while frightened, giving birth where privacy was made from blankets, holding a child at a river with water slapping the wagon side, washing cloth until her hands cracked, handing advice to another mother while needing comfort herself. It asked her to be practical and tender at the same time. That may be one of the oldest forms of courage. Historians continue to reconsider how the pioneer story changes when mothers and infants are placed at its centre rather than at the edge. The route looks different then. Landmarks become not only forts, passes, and rivers, but washing places, nursing stops, graves, shade patches, safe camps, and the rare blessed creek where water, grass, and quiet arrive together. The journey is no longer only a march towards settlement. It becomes a moving household, a fragile social world, a chain of women balancing public migration with private care. The baby begins to fuss. Not a serious cry, just the small complaint of someone who has had a full day of being alive. The mother shifts the child across her lap. She loosens the wrap, checks the diaper, finds nothing urgent, and smiles faintly. Sometimes the answer is simply tiredness. Imagine that, after rivers, mountains, disease, dust, hunger, and all those muddy laundry sessions. The baby has decided that sleep itself is the main injustice. She hums, the same low sound, or something like it, rises in her chest. You have heard it under thunder, you have heard it near fever, you have heard it after grief and during rain. Now it settles over the camp with no need to prove itself. The baby's eyelids lower, lift, lower again. A sibling nearby falls asleep halfway through, pretending not to. The father adjusts a blanket around the older child, then sits back, looking into the fire with the dazed expression of a man who has spent the day arguing with terrain and lost. Above the wagons, stars open slowly. The canvas roof glows faintly, pale as bone in the moonlight. The mother lowers the baby into the prepared place, not too near the wagon edge, not too far from her hand. She arranges the cloth around the small body with the care of someone setting down a lantern in wind. The child sighs, one fist rises, then drops. Sleep comes, not dramatically, but by soft degrees. You feel the long road gather itself into that breath. The packing, the feeding, the laundry, the storms, the births, the illnesses, the women's voices, the fathers and siblings, the uneasy meetings, the river crossings, the night rituals, the hunger, the play, the loss, the mountains, the arrival, the memory. All of it narrows to this: a baby asleep in a wagon and a mother listening. The frontier has often been told as a place of conquest, risk, and ambition. Tonight, it has been told as a place of arms around a child. That does not make it simple. It does not erase harm, grief, conflict, or the lands and peoples transformed by migration. But it lets you notice the small centre of the story, where history is not shouting, it is breathing. It is warm under a blanket. It smells faintly of smoke and milk. It survives, when it survives, because someone stays awake a little longer. The fire settles lower. The mother lies down beside the baby, still in her clothes, one hand close enough to feel the slightest movement. The wagon creaks as the night cools. Somewhere beyond camp, grass moves in the wind. Tomorrow, perhaps, the wagons will roll again, or perhaps this is the memory of the last wagon light, the glow that remains long after the wheels stop turning. Either way, the baby sleeps, the mother listens, and the road, for once, is quiet. Now let the final light soften. The wagon is still beneath the stars, and the night around it grows wider, gentler, slower. The baby sleeps without knowing the names of rivers, mountains, or maps. The mother's hand rests nearby, loose now, no longer searching, no longer folding, no longer measuring danger in every sound. For this small hour, nothing is required of her except to breathe. You can let the trail fade into distance. The wheels do not need to turn. The oxen are calm in the dark grass. The fire has become a red glow under ash, warm but quiet, like a thought nearly finished. The canvas above the wagon lifts once in the breeze, then settles again, soft as a sigh. All those miles, all those mornings, all those careful hands have brought you here, to the edge of sleep, where history becomes less like a lesson and more like a low voice beside the bed. You do not need to carry the water now. You do not need to mend the cloth. Hush the baby, pack the wagon, or watch the clouds. The road can rest without you. Picture the mother at last closing her eyes. Picture the baby dreaming in small movements, fingers opening as if letting go of a thread. Picture the camp held under moonlight, every wagon quiet, every fire dim, every tired heart allowed to loosen, and if any sound remains, let it be only the softest one breathing under canvas, slow and steady, in the hush after a long journey. The frontier grows distant, the stars grow gentle, the wagon light fades, not into darkness, but into rest. Sleep can come closer now. Nothing is chasing you down the road tonight. Only the calm remains, only the breath, only the whisper of wheels remembered. Sweet dreams.